paid good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
1988. The crime rate in the United States rises 400%. 1991. The United States Police Force is formed. 1997. New York City is a walled maximum security prison. John Carpenter's Escape from New York. Kurt Russell. Lee Van Cleef. Ernest Borgnine. Donald Pleasance. Isaac Hayes. Susan Hughley. Harry Dean Stanton as Brain. And Adrienne Barbeau as Maggie. John Carpenter's Escape from New York. The ultimate adventure of escape and survival.
Welcome to the Projection Booth. I'm your host, Mike White. Joining me once again is Mr. Aaron Peterson.
Hey, Mike. I feel like Rocky. I feel like I've been training for this episode my entire life. Honestly, I really have.
Also back in the booth is Father Malone.
You know, the last time we recorded a podcast, it was you, me, and Fresno Bob. You want to know what they did to Bob?
We continue our discussion of John Carpenter with a look at Escape from New York. Released in 1981, the film was written by Carpenter and Nick Castle and stars Kurt Russell in his first tough guy role. He plays Snake Plissken, a former Special Forces soldier turned criminal who is given a chance at redemption after the president's plane goes down in the prison colony once known as Manhattan. Yes, it's the dystopian future, the distant year of 1997, where all of the criminals are walled off on the island and it is turned over to the roving gangs of criminals. And of course, the Chud.
That's when the chuds came at me.
We will be spoiling the film as we go ahead, so if you haven't seen Escape from New York, just turn off the podcast, go watch it.
Shame on you.
And you can come back if you want to, but regardless, just watch the movie. Father Malone, when was the first time you saw Escape from New York, and what did you think?
I saw this movie during its first theatrical run, thanks to a large group of irresponsible older cousins who dragged me to every movie they went to, so I suppose I saw this movie in Saugus, Massachusetts in July of 1981. That was at General Cinemas. I just responded to it on every level. What I related to most was the concept of urban blight or urban decay. It's not new, but it felt like in the late 70s that everything was just crumbling. And here was a movie that really embraced that concept and spun it out in a fantastical way. Like, it wasn't the shiny future we kept getting from sci-fi movies, but it wasn't the complete opposite, which is like, the decimated, collapsing warehouse worlds of most dystopian futures. And so I responded to it on that level, and then it gave us a lead character that seemed to me at least rare at the time. I know you can't throw a rock without hitting an anti-hero these days, but at the time there was kind of no one like him on my radar. And then underneath that, the whole concept of a citywide prison to my 8-year-old mind was the most frightening thing I could possibly imagine. Like, as bad as it could be to be in prison, at least they had the appearance that somebody was trying to keep you safe. But here it's just a free-for-all. All that, and the acting and the music and the action, the music in particular, it really set the bar really high as to how good an action movie can be. And I'm still measuring movies against this one to this day.
How about you, Aaron?
I was 9 or 10, I think, and we either rented it or, honestly, I don't remember exactly where I watched. I know it wasn't in the theater. I either rented it or it was one of those HBO free weekends. Remember they had those back in the day? And from the opening music cue to the final smoke, I didn't move. I didn't leave my seat. I was enthralled the entire time, absolutely enamored with the film, yes, but mostly the character of Snake Plissken. He was everything I wanted to be. Like I told you in the last episode, I grew up in a very rough neighborhood, so I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to be a badass. I wanted to be tough and able to just get out of trouble and have a glorious coif of hair. And this movie began my lifelong love obsession with Kurt Vogel Russell.
The name's Plissken.
I remember going to dinner with my folks and one of my older cousins, and the cousin had seen Escape from New York and was basically telling them the entire plot of it. And I was probably 9 years old when this movie came out, so way too young for it. And my cousin didn't take me to go see it. He just described the whole thing for me. It was a lot of years later before I finally saw the film, and I just absolutely loved it. I think that by the time I saw it, I was already familiar with spaghetti westerns. So seeing Kurt Russell do this riffing on Clint Eastwood and then having Lee Van Cleef in there as Hulk, it really scratched an itch. It really paid homage to my favorite of the Dollars trilogies for a few dollars more. I really like their relationship in that, and they're more antagonistic in this one, though there is a reluctant admiration between Hawk and Snake. I don't think it's the other way around necessarily.
It is not. No.
But my God, that relationship, the story itself, like you said, it's taken me a lot of years before I realized just how bad New York was in the late 70s. This was written in 76? So that would have been the perfect time to write this. You know, I talked about this on the Wolfen episode. I've talked about it on other episodes. I mean, New York, we talked about it, especially on the cruising episode. Cruising is very much that Ford says to city, drop dead kind of thing. It's this whole idea of New York being completely bankrupt financially and then eventually emotionally and structurally and spiritually. It made sense that New York was headed in this type of direction. And yeah, I absolutely was so thrilled with this kind of dystopian world of urban decay.
Father Malone alluded to it. I don't know if you guys feel the same way as I do, but for me, this was very much like the first dark science fiction movie I had seen as a kid. I remember, Star Wars and a lot of films of that in that vein were out. But this was the first time where I saw one where it was like a dystopian future, and you've got a guy who's really not a good guy, and you've got a world that's just awful, and it's dark. Everything about it is dark. Like there's not really hope in this movie. And I don't think I had seen that up until that moment, which might be why it stuck with me so much.
The sort of dystopian films we had gotten previous to this were, either like a total nuclear holocaust hellscape or set far enough in the future where it felt alien, regardless of how they were trying to tie it to what we were going through in our own lives. And this one seemed to be like, this is just a heightened version of our reality. Like you could see this coming to pass a lot quicker than Soylent Green or Omega Man or something like that. So it felt very lived in and very real. I mean, Carpenter did a phenomenal job of making this world never seem anything like a reality. At no point in this movie can I look at something and just go, oh, well, we're on a set now. And this is, 40 years later, like all of the production design and all of the look of the movie just really holds up crazily. But yeah, and at the time, there really wasn't anyone making that kind of a futuristic movie where it's relatable in the present, but you can also see as, 16, 17 years down the line.
Now, I had seen Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior before I saw this movie, but also to your point, it's 1982 when that one comes out, so a year after this one, and it being set in Australia, it's foreign in that way and foreign in the whole desert landscape. I'm from just outside of Detroit, so the idea of this like urban blight, I was pretty familiar with it. So Mad Max, that's its own thing. And this was the first time that I saw an American city, other than real life, but an American city, the set of a dystopian film, which I absolutely loved it. And I loved the stars. I loved the cast of this film. Everybody down to the smallest player is really giving their all. And you see those familiar faces. We've talked about some. We talked about some last week when we talked about Assault on Precinct 13. You get a lot of those same faces back, plus some of the people that Carpenter had worked on films with in between. So seeing Tom Atkins in here, of course, Adrienne Barbeau. But yeah, you got Charlie Cyphers in here as well. Just all of these great faces. And then, of course, Frank Doubleday as Romero. I mean, he became the face of the movie in a lot of the advertising. Just that crazy hair and those sharpened teeth that he has. Oh, man. And that fucking crazy laugh that he does in the movie is just fantastic.
I think Romero's introduction, it might be my favorite character introduction of any film. It's indicative of what made Carpenter, his early work, so great was he would allow a scene to happen as long as it needed to. It didn't seem like every scene was sort of on a clock, like he was cutting to get us to the next thing. So Romero saunters up to the scene and he lets him do that. And it's so weird. And it's like it's the perfect, I mean, if you could have turned the entire prison into a character, here it is. Cause he's so weird and kind of freaky and uncompromising and clearly insane. By the way, the little bow that he does to Houck is one of the best things I've ever seen in any film. Just like so flippant, but at the same time, like in control. Like, yeah, I love Romero as a character. Just that he won't answer them after a while and just keeps counting down. It's so good.
You touch me, he dies. If you're not in the air in 30 seconds, he dies. If you come back in, he dies. "20 seconds.
I'm ready to talk.
19. 18.
What do you want?
17. 16.
Let's go. Let's go.
That they cut away, and here's Hawk and his men, and they're just like, shit, let's get out of here. We don't want the president to die. And then cut back to Romero for his hiss. It's like, oh, that is so nice. Like, that didn't need to be there, but it was the perfect way to put a button on that scene.
Oh, it needed to be there. It needed to be there. It was a perfect dynamic. It's a power dynamic. It's just showing you know what? We can't negotiate. We're not negotiating with you. We'll tell you what the deal is when we're ready to tell you. Get out of here. By the way, I'm scary.
It's very obvious to the three of us why I chose this movie to talk about after Assault on Precinct 13. But when you're watching this film and here comes a fucking bus showing up on Liberty Island with just one prisoner now, who is such a badass. I mean, this is Napoleon Wilson Part 2. This is the next generation having Snake Plissken introduced the way that he's introduced coming off of this bus. Though it is interesting that that wasn't the original introduction. I do like that people have pieced together out of different outtakes and deleted scenes and all this. I've seen a fan edit now of that original opening. I'm glad that they cut that original opening, but it is still fascinating to see, because I like Snake Plissken so much. It is interesting to see that first robbery and how it goes wrong, and just that he's trying to help out his buddy. And I'm not sure if that's Fresno Bob at that point or something.
No, that's a character named Taylor. No, because the Fresno Bob situation was 4 years ago in Kansas City.
And God, I love that we have all these references to past adventures.
With no explanation.
Yeah, and it's that thing that I like about the original Star Wars is when they will talk about things that happened in the past and we don't have to see them. So thank God there hasn't been like a series of prequels of Snake Plissken's early adventures.
There's a pretty clean version if you've got the special edition DVD or Blu-ray, which, if you get the Steelbook case or anything like that, it's got the actual opening scene put together pretty well on that. that you can see. I mean, it was a solid opening. I do feel it's distracting from the story.
I was ecstatic just to see it because, like you said, Mike, like any chance to see more of Snake Plissken is a benefit. But like the fact that we're told he robbed the Federal Reserve Depository, in my mind, not knowing how he got caught was so great because you could only imagine the Herculean effort it would have taken to get this guy. But when what we're given here is kind of dumb in a way that like the way they're escaping is on a train, which is like the least beneficial to a criminal way to get away because there's a stop and a start. Then it takes virtually nothing to get him. He doesn't, I mean, I get it that he goes back for his friend and whatever, but like it does a disservice to the character in that it gives him a backstory that only enriches his character not having.
It does show that he's willing to go back for his comrade, though. I mean, it does show that he has a loyalty. He has a code. I do think that was explained in that opening because he does, like you said, he could have gotten away. He was free and clear and he goes back for his friend is what happens. And it's too late. And that's where he gets caught. So at least we know he has a code. It's a very flawed code, but it's his own code.
But it's not something that we're not going to get from him later in the movie. I mean, he doesn't.
For the most part. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't like stay with Maggie until the final moment, but he does his best to keep her moving and with them, so. And the fact that when we meet Brain and he's excoriating Brain for leaving them there, it's like, we're going to find that out about him. But the fact that this bus pulls up and this guy gets out and it's all completely silent till we get down into the thing and they like hold it. And instead of like reading us his like, his crimes and whatever, it just blacks right out. Like he remains a mystery through most of the movie. And that's so great to be able to sort of reveal little bits about him along the way.
I really like that fade to black that they have. And when the person says hold it, I always think, is that Hawk saying that? Like, are we in like a weird time loop or something? Because then we get his introduction, Hawk's introduction after that. And then we get the whole setup of the plane and all of this. And I mean, it's silly, but I really enjoy the female guerrilla fighter on the plane and her very, particular way of speech. I always like the way that she is excoriating the U.S. and just talking about, the racist state that they're in and that it's the National Liberation Front. And I'm just like, yeah, this is good. It's the thing too, playing in 1981. It's like, yeah, we were still getting a lot of hijacked planes. This was not a non-occurrence. I can't tell you the last time a plane has been hijacked, but it seemed like growing up in the 70s that was the thing, that you could hijack a plane pretty darn easy. I mean, it was a punchline for a lot of years, is like, turn this plane around, or this plane is now going to Cuba. And this is exactly that here. And having this, small faction of people, well, who knows how large their faction is, but having this terrorist group, I was just like, okay, yeah. And using that name, the National Liberation Front, I'm just like, okay, these guys are probably friends with the Symbionese army.
A funny thing about that particular scene, having watched the movie on videotape for nigh on 20 years, just pan and scan versus widescreen. In the pan and scan version of that, it's a close-up of her the entire time. And you can't see that there are two guys with their throats cut just to her left and behind her. And like seeing it again when they finally put this out on Letterboxd was like jarring. Like, wow. Like, a reminder that Carpenter was painting at a full frame sort of situation. And the other scene, like later in the movie when they're on the train and Snake is trying to get the president, he sort of sneaks up in the background and breaks that one guy's neck. That whole scene was not in the pan and scan. It was close up of this guy and the president, which gives us nothing at all. Like, what are you looking at? And like, I don't know. What was he looking at?
The cinematography in this movie is so good, and listening to some of the audio commentaries and hearing how Dean Cundey was just so fast with lighting some of these things, like looking at some of the street scenes that there are, especially when Snake first gets to the island and he's walking and you've got a lot of red lights and then you've got these magnesium type fires going on and these barrels and just that walk by kind of scenes of him in New York. There's one shot, I think it's before the person comes up and starts pounding on the manhole covers, where it's very green lit, and I really like the way that it looks, and you can see the streetlights going almost looks like to infinity kind of thing. I really appreciate just how great this movie looks.
What did you guys feel about the introduction of Snake? Because you've got this guy that we're supposed to root for, and this is back when heroes were pretty black and white. So you always had the guy that goes and he's going to save the girl, and here you have a guy who literally ignores a woman in peril as soon as he gets to New York. From the beginning, I mean, he's very flippant to the government figure about saving the president. So for us sitting there, that obviously at that time was kind of like, wow, is he even a hero? Is he really, anti-hero wasn't really a term as much back then. What did you think about the introduction of Snake?
Are we talking about the sort of first scene between him and Hauk?
Well, just in general, just like the character that they first introduce us to about how he's flippant about authority. He immediately ignores a woman in peril. Like these are typically things that are never done by a hero, and they do it right off the bat. So it's our immediate introduction to this guy, which is, we don't know if he's a hero, but he's definitely not great.
He's not. I mean, like the sort of early scene where he does not help that punker girl, like being assaulted, that was kind of shocking, definitely shocking. But we're dealing with a guy who's on a mission that he does not want to be on. And, it's established from the get-go that he is a criminal. The sort of cynicism about authority figures, like, is just ingrained, and maybe this movie helped me on that path, but I can certainly relate more to his hero than I could, like, Luke Skywalker or, any of the sort of heroes from fantasy or sci-fi heroes in the past who were always doing the right thing to do the right thing. Like, I could never quite relate to like a knight who's just going to go fight that dragon because it's the thing to do. He was definitely a breath of fresh air as far as what a hero can be. And he definitely proves himself to be the hero no matter what. Like, he does get that job done and doesn't let anyone off the hook.
I have a deal for you. It was an accident. About an hour ago, a small jet went down inside New York City. The president was on board.
President of what?
That's not funny, Plissken. You go in, find the president, bring him out in 24 hours, and you're a free man.
24 hours, huh?
I'm making you an offer.
Bullshit.
Straight, just like I said.
I'll think about it.
No time. Give me an answer.
Get a new president.
We're still at war, Plissken. We need him alive.
I don't give a fuck about your war. Or your president.
Is that your answer?
I'm thinking about it.
Think hard.
Why me?
You flew the Gulf Fire over Leningrad. You know how to get in quiet. You're all I've got.
I guess I go in one way or the other. Doesn't mean shit to me. Give me the paper.
When you come out?
Before.
I told you I wasn't a fool, Plissken.
Call me Snake.
I mentioned Clint Eastwood before, and of course I keep thinking of him in the spaghetti westerns, but you also have Clint Eastwood as Dirty Harry. Dirty Harry is very much fed up with the way the politics are run in San Francisco. I think he would basically say, get a new president if he didn't like who the current president was. But Dirty Harry would have stopped those guys from roughing up that punker girl. I don't know if Joe / Blondie / whatever, I don't know if he would have stopped that. He might have, because you do have that backstory of like, I'm doing for you what nobody did for me. I think we've seen it before, maybe a little bit in some of the other spaghetti western heroes, like a Django or like a Sartana, some of these other more badass characters. It's troubling that he doesn't help somebody when they are in need of help, but to your point, Father Malone, he is on this mission. He has a timer. He needs to get this solved in a certain amount of time, or else he will die. And he just wants to get the friggin' thing done. Even as soon as he finds George Buck Flower, and it's just like, okay, get the machine ready. President's dead. I'm coming out. And it's like, no. You still got to look for him. It's like, well, fuck you. He really does not want to be there. And as soon as he thinks the president's dead, it's just like, okay, yeah, mission's over. That's it.
I've grown up my whole life just loving that character. And I was trying to think, what was the moment? Like, what was the minute where I just like, that's why I love him. And I kept coming back to that introduction because I think for me personally, that's why I wanted to know how it was for you guys. For me personally, every hero I had seen to that point was the non-flawed hero. It was the guy that's always going to do the right thing. I hadn't seen Dirty Harry by that point. So he was the guy who was going to do the right thing. He was always going to go out there. He's going to help the damsel in distress. And here's a guy who just felt more real, I guess, maybe real for the time, maybe in a grittier way and not necessarily in a moral code kind of way. But he was real for the time. He was doing what he needed to do, and it stuck with me because that felt more realistic than the Luke Skywalkers of the world.
If Snake Plissken had been put into the New York penitentiary as a prisoner and he came across three guys assaulting a girl, like that might have been a different scenario. But here he's got a watch on his wrist counting down before his head explodes, or rather his arteries explode, and he's on the mission. So I think by the end of the movie, at least morally, he's redeemed. But I totally agree with you. Here was a guy who seemed as real a hero for the first time in sort of a speculative fiction way that we had ever seen before.
Well, his second opportunity to save somebody, he actually does try to save them. When he's in chock full of nuts and all of the crazies are coming through, he does try to save Susan Hubley, and he seems distraught that he can't. We talked last week about the whole idea of the Night of the Living Dead being an influence on Assault on Precinct 13. And again, I can see this with all of these guys. I mean, it feels like they're just like coming out of everywhere. It's almost like, Marion in that, the Well of the Souls with all the snakes coming out. It feels very similar to like, just like wherever you turn, these crazies are coming out and coming for him. So it definitely has that same, that's why I made the joke about the Chud at the beginning. It feels like it has that same kind of zombie-esque attack that we just saw last week.
It's a terrifying scene, and we get a couple of them with the sort of mob in New York, and it's an excellent reminder that this is a whole new world. Like, the last thing he was expecting was that sewer cover to pop off and people start flooding out into it. Just another measure of the sort of danger that he's constantly up against in here. And once again, I mean, I know I keep harping on it, but it felt so real. It could have been done clumsily and not effectively. And here, those threats feel like they could take him out very easily.
Carpenter shot those early scenes almost like a horror movie. Even the score was so reminiscent of a horror movie.
When you get those moments of like jump scares, especially that like noise that he'll do on the soundtrack
at the train.
And the first time you see that guy who's knocking on the manhole covers, like the way that we do this like really quick rack focus to him in the background, I was like, whoa, okay. It's like, here's Snake sitting in this chair, and then we rack really quickly to this guy coming down the street, and it's just like, wow, okay, this seems like it could be dangerous just from the way that the focus changed. So very, very smart. And then, even when we're introduced to Cabby, it's like, okay, who is this guy? And I'm, I've seen Ernest Borgnine be evil before, so I don't know if he's going to be a helper or not. And so you're suspicious of every single person that you meet in here, much like Snake is. You're really put into his shoes, or boots in this case, to feel suspicious of every single person that you meet.
Especially Cabby. He's so over the top. I mean, he just comes across as that dude's going to murder you in your sleep. That's exactly what he comes across as. But you love him. By the end, you just absolutely love him.
Hey, Snake, when'd you get in? I didn't even know they caught you. Oh, Snake Plissken in my cab? Wait till I tell Eddie.
I figured that Cabby was not a prisoner at all. That he was just a guy who refused to leave his cab in New York.
Yeah, what was Cabby's crime?
If you go find that Broadway show, they actually have the lyrics. You can find them online. And it's just like murder, death, kill. That's the entire song. It's great.
Shoot a cop with a gun. The Big Apple is plenty of fun.
I had heard Deborah Hill was talking that it was originally supposed to be a Sondheim song. It was supposed to be, I want to say she said, Everything's Coming Up Roses. And you can almost hear that when you listen to the song.
It's very close. Everyone's coming to New York. Did you guys get the timer? I got to ask about the timer. I meant to do it a minute ago when you mentioned it.
I rewatched the movie, like the first 30 minutes right before I came down here so we could have this discussion. So
now, do you know what I'm talking about, though?
Yeah, so
okay.
I think the confusion comes. So they put the timer on his wrist and they set it for 23 hours. It's 22:59 when it starts up. Where the confusion comes in is it's not 23 hours that he has. I think they say something like
22.
an hour before, it'll happen an hour before that timer goes off. And there's this whole thing about like how the president has to actually be out a little bit earlier because he needs to get up to wherever to make this speech about nuclear fusion, I guess, this weird MacGuffin of the president's speech. But yeah, I agree with you. It was a little confusing.
Tell him.
Tell me what?
That idea you had about turning the Gulf Fire around 180 degrees and flying off to Canada.
What did you do to me, asshole?
My idea, Plissken. Something we've been fooling around with. 2 microscopic capsules lodged in your arteries. They're already starting to dissolve. In 22 hours, the cores will completely dissolve. Inside the cores are a heat-sensing charge. Not a large explosive, about the size of a pinhead. Just big enough to open up both your arteries. I'd say you'd be dead in 10 or 15 seconds.
Come out now.
They're protected by the cores. 15 minutes before the last hour's up, we can neutralize the charge with X-rays.
The explosive charges that they've put into his neck cannot be irradiated until an hour before they're going to explode, right? So that's that clock. And then the other clock was just, I guess, the conference was going to be over.
Right, but I was telling Mike before we did the podcast, I'm like, this is the debate my friends and I had for years, literally years. I think I lost a friend over this deal. But when they put it, he says 24 hours, and then they put the watch on, he started at 23, and it's like 22:59 when it actually starts. And then he says, you got 22 hours to get him out. And he's like, what, we talked about 24. And he's like, no, in 22 hours, the summit's over. He's got to be back in 22 hours. And you got to be back an hour before in order to neutralize the charges. Well, everything in the dialogue says 22 hours, but his clock says 22:59. So I'm like, he was technically an hour late. I'm pretty sure he should have died. That was the debate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I guess I can see that.
When he puts the watch on him, he says 22 hours, 59 minutes, 57 seconds.
No, he says, Lee Van Cleef says several times, you got 22 hours, 22 hours. He doesn't say 23 hours, which would have made more sense because he didn't say 22 hours and 59 minutes. He just leaves it at 22 hours. It's the weirdest thing. I'm sure it's just like a faux pas.
He may have repeated the 22 hours, but I know for certain when he puts the watch on him, he says 22 hours, 59 minutes, 57 seconds. And then Plissken goes, he talked about 24.
I don't think he says 22 hours. He doesn't actually say all the minutes. They show it. They show it.
What I need you to do is put together a YouTube video all about this. Maybe you can get Ryan Airy from Screen Crush to host it for you. That would be pretty good.
I'll get on that.
Okay, good. And what I need is a poster image for the video with like Snake Plissken and maybe Isaac Hayes in the background with like a big arrow pointing to Isaac Hayes and something circled. It doesn't matter what it is. Just circle something and then be like the shocking truth about Escape from New York.
This is perfect. I think like 100,000 hits. Easy.
At least.
Easy.
At least.
And at the end, nothing's resolved.
A yellow border around it would be good. That's what we think. Like and subscribe to the video and comment below.
Hey, guys.
Make sure you hit that bell so you're alerted with the next time we have a video, which is all about the timer of 8 hours in Escape from LA. But we'll talk about that eventually.
Unfortunately.
We are going to be on different sides of the fence on that one, sadly.
Uh-oh.
We will be.
Oh, man.
Sometimes I can enjoy things while acknowledging that's not great.
Well, we were on different sides when it came to Assault from Precinct 13 remake, and we didn't kill each other, so.
That's true. Sure, we'll live.
Talking about him coming into New York City, talking about even his introduction, the introduction of each character that is very, very considered. Each time we meet a new person, what they're going to bring to the story, and then how they are introduced and where they fit into possibly his past or not. I just love the introductions of each of these characters, and each of these characters is so well drawn, even though you just get the slightest information. Like I said, we don't know why Cabby is there. I think I kind of agree. He says that he's been driving cab for 30 years, and let's see, by that time, because the first title card comes up as 1988 about the crime rate, correct? And then we're set in 1997, so Cabby was driving well before 1988 when the crime rate skyrocketed. So I wouldn't be surprised, because otherwise he's going to have to get out of Manhattan, commit a crime, get back in, and then find his cab again.
And we're already suspending a lot of belief or disbelief. You know what's interesting? I read the screenplay last night. Evidently, this movie takes place on October 23rd, 1997. It's a title card that they left off, but I thought that was interesting that they bothered to put it in there.
I like when they get that specific about things. I always like when there's that particular date. I always like the beginning of Psycho for that reason, that they give us date and time, that they're setting up like this is a weekend. I don't think it really matters that it's October 23rd in this world of Escape from New York, but it is nice that they would have a date because I appreciate being grounded like that.
I kind of wish it would have been October 30th since Nick Castle wrote it.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, right. Speaking of the script and like adding in these little elements, the opening sort of info dump, the Star Wars crawl in Escape from New York Land, where Jamie Lee Curtis lays out what this world is. It's so economical. I mean, it's just a couple of, graphic images and her talking about them, but it feels really exciting. And like, I think it throws you into the world really well. Like from that to like the first shot of New York where we crane up through from the wall. It's, I don't know. I'm just gushing about the movie now.
I totally agree. And I think maps are underrated. People might really get on my case about that, but there are certain times where I'm just like, a map in this movie would probably do you well. And especially when it comes to like certain documentaries, like a friend of mine worked on a documentary and it was about all of these groups of protesters of the Vietnam War and where they were in the United States. And I was just like, I think showing like where these people were on an actual map would probably help you out. And so having that map of Manhattan, and I know that test audiences didn't actually understand that Manhattan was an island. I understood that, but it was still nice that they're just like, yeah, and this is how we would cut it off. We would cut off these 5 bridges. They don't talk about the tunnels. That's okay. But we would cut off these 5 bridges and put up this wall. And there you go. And that we keep seeing that wall in different shots at the beginning. I thought it was really nice. And we're going to hear from Joe Alves later on. And the production design on this movie, especially when it comes to this police force that they have, this very fascistic looking police force, the use of the eagle emblem that they have throughout this whole thing, very, very Nazi Germany to me. Even the way that they're hanging the flag from a bridge in the background at the beginning is very reminiscent to me of the Nazi banners rather than having the flag, tilted 90 degrees. It's hanging downwards, which I thought was a really nice touch to say, like, this isn't the United States that you're used to.
Just the idea, the concept of you're going to throw a prisoner in and they never get to come out. I mean, just that seems very draconian. I mean, it's just so savage and such a savage idea that you would sit there and stick people in. They robbed a bank. Okay, he can't come out in 5 years or 10 years. No, he's going to be there forever. What? It's just that idea is very Nazi Germany, I would say.
Combating that, I think Carpenter did a really smart thing in having the faces of the government in this movie, other than sort of the bumbling president that we get, is Lee Van Cleef and Tom Atkins. Because, like, they are representations of this police state that, who knows what's going on in the rest of America, but they seem at least like decent people. In which, we talked about this during Assault on Precinct 13, and I think, Carpenter would cast people that brought with them more than the script was asking of them. You look at Lee Van Cleef, and we've seen him be a total psychopath, but, as this one character, he seems like really grounded and like I said, kind of a decent guy. Like, he obviously does have respect for Plissken, that he's going to entrust him with this job, even if he thinks that he'll, screw him over. Down to Ernest Borgnine, like all the cast, like through the entire movie, they all seem to have something going on that even if we're not explicitly told, we can infer.
So much of every character is inferred. I mean, even the main character really gets no backstory, but we feel like we know him. Cabby, you feel like you know him. Brain, you feel like you get the gist of who he is. Maggie, even though she hardly has any lines, I kind of get the feel like I know who she is. I think that he did a really great job of showcasing characters without dumping exposition left and right. That's very hard to do. And I don't think he gets enough credit for that.
I even like this idea of Donald Pleasance as being our president, and he makes no bones about covering his accent. He does not try to do it at all. And it's just like, okay, what world are we in where we can have a British guy as president? I kind of like that we don't have that explanation. We don't have, well, the 35th Amendment allowed it so that we could have foreign-born presidents, and this happened and this happened, and, Oceania has always been at war with Europa and stuff. It's just like, no, here's this guy, and then we get to learn what a shit he is, especially towards the end of the movie, because we don't get a whole lot of him at the beginning. We just have him like, hey, can you blast the door? Okay, I'm going in the egg and getting shot out kind of thing. But there's not a lot of him until we get out of the prison. And then he's just like, I really appreciate your sacrifice. Basically like, go suck an egg, Snake.
And Carpenter said Pleasance wrote a backstory for that. And he said, I'm not using it. That's pretty funny.
Well, it was the American president and Margaret Thatcher had a child.
Yep. Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see him being Thatcher and Reagan's baby.
And it's a good thing to like think about, but we don't need to be told at any point. Like all the little asides, like Two Purple Hearts, Leningrad and Siberia. It's like, okay, well, I guess we were at war with Russia and there were some major battles here and there. Texas Thunder, like, oh, okay. So these guys grudgingly know each other from the war that is no longer happening. And down to, when the sort of moment between Brain and Snake Plissken, when he meets him, he's like, Harold Hellman, you and I have history together, and we can do it in just a couple of lines and convey so much. And if I can just say, one thing I really love about that scene in particular, and I only noticed it recently, is when Snake finally comes in on Brain and like kicks his chair back and puts the gun up to him. Brain never wavers. He never seems afraid of Snake Plissken at all, which I really appreciated because they would have done a bit of cowering or crying in another movie. Like everyone seems really solid and sure of themselves. And I guess that's a carryover from Assault on Precinct 13, but good Lord.
Harold Hellman. Snake?
Harold?
How you been, Harold? I'm glad you remember me. Yeah. Man should remember his past. Kansas City 4 years ago, you ran out on me. You left me sitting there.
You were late.
We were buddies, Harold. You, me, and Fresno Bob. You know what they did to Bob?
You want to see him sprayed all over that map, baby? Where's the president?
I swear to God, Snake, I don't know.
Don't fuck with me.
Why do you want to know?
I want him.
Working for the man now, huh?
I'll just beat it out of your squeeze.
Mm-hmm. Maggie doesn't know exactly where he is, and unless you know precisely where he is, you'll never find him.
Yeah, it's like he's afraid of the Duke a little bit. The way that he acts around Romero, this whole, like, him bluffing and trying to get in to see the president, but still, he's kind of got a swagger, brings swagger in a little bit. And yeah, I like that he's very much this kind of con artist as far as like, you're going to need me to do this. You're going to need me to do that. He's always like proving himself like, you can't kill me because X, Y, and Z. And there's always a reason. And that's a great reason why they call him Brain is because he's always thinking and always coming up with that next excuse of like, oh, you can't do that because of this. And you need me around because of this. Who's going to make the gasoline for you? Who's going to do this for you? Who's going to do that? It's me. It's Brain. That I'm the only guy that can do all of this stuff.
And in that respect, Snake never once makes that plea that I can recall, unless I'm forgetting something. I don't recall him ever making a plea to save his own life.
No,
I don't think he does.
He does demand that they remove the explosives immediately.
But he's not begging. He's just like, when I get back, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. Still wish he would have.
Yeah, I think that's the only promise he doesn't keep, right? Is not killing Hawk. Yeah.
But at least he explains
only because he's too tired. It was going to happen.
If he would have had a nap, this movie would have ended completely different.
Well, he does get knocked out for a little while. And we talked about this ticking clock, this literal ticking clock that they have in this. They've got those daylight scenes because this movie is so dark so often that the daylight scenes are almost a shock when they happen. And it kind of reminds me of a movie that Carpenter made a few years prior was Halloween, and this whole idea of The scariest part of Halloween to me is when you see Michael Myers in the daytime. When he's hanging out by that laundry and you get to see him just standing outside of the house, just like, holy shit. Because it's one thing to have a boogeyman at night, but to see the boogeyman during the daytime, that's a whole different thing. So having these daytime scenes, I think they can be a little off-putting for some people, but for me, it's just like, yeah, no, it's showing that you've got a full day to rescue the president. And it's also showing that when the sun comes up, these monsters that are in New York are not going away. They are still hanging out and they still run the whole show. This is not I Am Legend. It's not like Anthony Zerbe just disappears into the woodwork once the sun comes up, leaving the rest of the city for Neville to take charge of. No, they're there. The vampires are there full time.
And they can wave down helicopters.
Their skill is waving down helicopters. Like,
yeah,
Jim, that's you. That is you. Get that.
And I do like that moment when you think that Cabby has turned on him, that when he runs away, but eventually he comes back and kind of saves the day. And I'm glad that he's got like the reaction for everything, which is just, throw a Molotov cocktail. It's fine.
I'm telling you, Molotov cocktails work. Anytime I had a problem and I threw a Molotov cocktail, boom, right away. I had a different problem.
Speaking of character introductions, like, as you said, they're all really solid and all really informative, from Plissken to Hauk to Cabby to Brain. And then we've been hearing about him for the entire movie. Here is the spectacle of the Duke of New York with an amazing theme by Carpenter. Not a disappointment at all, like exceeding the expectations. And then he gets out of the car and it's goddamn Isaac Hayes. Holy shit.
And we'd all follow him. I totally got it. If I was in New York, I'd be like, all right, yeah, what do you want me to do? I'll wave helicopters down.
The outfit, the vehicle with all of the candelabras on there,
yeah.
the chandelier. It's just like, oh my God. And yeah, when he gives that little speech.
They sent in their best man. And when we roll down the 69th Street Bridge tomorrow on our way to freedom, we're going to have their best man leading the way from the neck up. On the hood of my car.
You're right. I'm right there with you. Just like, yes, I will follow this man because he is so fucking cool. And he's given the crowd the bread and circuses that they want. The whole idea of him shooting at the president. I love that scene. I love that he's got that whole, gladiatorial thing going on with what's the guy's name? Slag, right?
Yeah, Slag.
Just all of that. It just works so well. And one of my favorite fucking lines from this movie. It's so simple, but I sure do love it. The whole,
what did I teach you?
You are Duke of New York. You're a number one.
I can't hear you.
You are the Duke of New York. You're a number one.
That gets paid back so well.
I think this movie is a perfect movie except for that scene, because I just think that briefcase would have come off his wrist as soon as he came out of the pod. Even if they cut his hand off to get it. Like, why were they waiting around for it to see what's inside?
They're not master criminals. They didn't think too hard on this plan. They're just like, keep him alive, keep the briefcase around, whatever. Make him say the words.
The president is useless to them at a certain point. Like, he actually has like an expiration date on him, and they don't realize that.
That's a lot of crap.
This whole thing of like, if he doesn't make it to the conference or that speech doesn't play, yeah, that's it. Get a new president, just like Snake would say.
Just go pick a new one up.
Yeah. So
president of what?
They have no idea that if they drive across the bridge 12 hours from now rather than 10 hours from now, it's not going to do them any good because the president doesn't have any value. They're going to get burned off the wall.
The other line I love in this movie from the Duke is when they've gone up to the roof of the World Trade Center and discovered that they can't get away that way, and they come back in and look in the hood of the car, and the guy pops out with the thing. It cuts over to Isaac Hayes. Car trouble? So casual. And another thing I like about that scene is so they've removed this steam engine from the car in this elaborate ruse to like, and then the steam engine pays off and allows them to get away. Like everything seems so considered in this movie. It's insane.
It's very thought out. I thought you were dead. Everybody that says that dies, which I think is hysterical.
Yeah. I never realized that.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was a running gag, but I didn't realize that everybody that says that ends up dying. Whatever ends up happening to Cabby?
Yeah, he gets exploded in the car. When the car goes apart.
I remember the car splitting apart. I would like to think that Cabby somehow made it out, but I guess that's too much.
Blew him into the water. He swam away. He's fine. How's that?
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Found a new cab.
Found a new cab. Did he make it past the wall? Is he driving cab in like New Jersey now?
Hopefully. I want nothing but good for Cabby. He seemed like a decent sort. He's the only one in that audience really enjoying the show.
He really was. He was like bopping in his seat, wasn't he? He was just like, yeah.
Grinning ear to ear. He was having a great time at the theater.
Father Malone, you mentioned reading the script, and if memory serves, there's a little bit more in that scene because Snake walks in and basically walks past the ticket taker and doesn't like, the ticket taker and the manager come down and like, hey, you didn't pay to come in kind of thing.
Yeah. It's it's 2 cans to come in, 3 cans to sleep, like 4 cans if you want to. Yeah, that's mercifully cut, I guess. We didn't need any more interaction with the people running the theater.
No. Though it is nice that you see him sleeping there with all the cans next to him at the entrance of the theater.
Absolutely. So even if we don't get that scene and understand what those means, there was a meaning behind it.
How lean is that script? I got to figure it's sub 90 pages. Maybe 80.
Recall. I mean, it's
follows
around there.
Very closely. I don't remember there being like, oh my God, look at this amazing scene that didn't happen. You know, other than that opening, there were just like a couple things here and there that I can remember being slightly different, but it wasn't like, oh yeah, there's a whole other character that got cut out of the movie at this point and you learn more about blah, blah, blah. Like, no, that stuff isn't there.
And I figured just because there's so little dialogue, it would be a lean script too, because it's just description for most of
the scene where Snake is gearing up, where Remy is sort of giving him the rundown of what's going on in the prison. I think that was much longer originally. Like he sort of plotted out where each section, like this is controlled by Indians and this is controlled by them and this is the homosexual area. And like, again, the less we know, the better the movie gets.
Yeah, I do like that little throwaway line when the glider falls off of the World Trade Center and Brain's like, goddamn Redskins. And it's just like, okay, yeah. All right. This is going back to that Western movie we were talking about last week. You know, this is another, basically it's a Western of, you got the Indians that are ruining his plans.
They're savages, Mr. President.
What'd you think of the cage match with Ox Baker?
Oh, man.
Just the sound of those bats hitting with the spikes in it. Holy God, what a great sound.
The sound design is fucking fantastic. And yeah, it sells so much of that fight. The sound design also, and we can come back to the fight, but the sound design is so crucial when it comes to those helicopters. Because yeah, we've got some real helicopters in there. Then we've got a lot of models of helicopters, animation of helicopters. They did such a great job with the sound design. Man, the effects and everything, there's some moments where you've got like guards walking in front and then the darkened New York skyline behind them. I don't know why I never really thought about it until today. I was just like, oh yeah, no, there are little lights here and there, but Manhattan is black because there's no electricity going to them anymore. So you have to do everything with special effects. You can't just take a shot of the New York skyline unless maybe it's during the day. But at night, no, it's going to be lit up like a Christmas tree. So you have to fake it and make everything paintings or mats or backdrops or whatever. And it just looks so nice.
It's a good way to mask the fact that it's shot in, East St. Louis, I think. It's a good way to mask that as well, because then you don't have so much prominence focused on the buildings that people would see otherwise. It might stand out to them otherwise. That's another benefit.
If you did this movie today, like, it would be easy to sort of recreate that skyline digitally, but that they would color it up too much. They would make it too bright just to show us the destruction. Whereas it's just so scary to see the New York skyline completely blacked out.
And this would have been, 3-4 years past the blackout. I think that would have been your only chance to take photos of the New York skyline completely.
Get in there, guys.
And yeah, the idea of them shooting in St. Louis was really smart, especially I didn't realize this until, again, I was listening to a commentary where they're talking about how the train station in St. Louis is modeled after the Grand Central Station. And at this point in St. Louis's history, they're not doing well either. So Joe Alves and his guys, they didn't have to make the train station look shitty at all. They basically brought in some stuff and just set it up, but it was already decrepit. So they actually made it look better after they left than when they went in, because this was another pretty much abandoned building that they were taking over.
That was a great description. They didn't have to make it shitty. It was already shitty.
The gladiatorial combat, like, now, if they had like a crazy budget, it would have just been Madison Square Garden. I think even in the script, it's described as Madison Square Garden. And the fact that they didn't let that deter them. I mean, that is the St. Louis train station, like the sort of main lobby that they've just redressed to make it look like this gladiatorial arena. And that if they had made this movie now, they wouldn't have cared if the CG was good or bad in making it look like Madison Square Garden. Whereas it feels more organic because they made it on a set.
Yeah, to hear some of those tricks that they did to tie sets together, that whole idea of going from Liberty Island, like the actual Liberty Island, to Los Angeles, with going across a black and then back to light, and that the cut is hidden in that black section. So smart.
Beautiful. And it makes you sort of reconsider the geography, because we know the Statue of Liberty is on an island, but clearly now you can walk into a giant expanse of concrete that they've built this wall up against.
Well, and it's got to have some sort of bridge, because they've got a bus showing up on Liberty Island now. Again, I didn't need 10 minutes of explanation for that. Give me Jamie Lee Curtis, 5 minutes of faux computer animation that looks fucking brilliant for 1981. I'll take it. Sure.
How many people are listening to this podcast and realizing for the first time that Jamie Lee Curtis did that opening narration and like, what?
Yeah, I watched the movie for how many years? I had no idea it was her.
Oh, yeah. Does she do all of those computer voices, or is there a second woman in there? Because there's also the Stay on the Orange Line thing.
No, the Stay on the Orange Line is still Jamie Lee Curtis, but the tracer test voice, that's Deborah Hill. I
appreciated hearing Deborah Hill talking about some of the, I can't remember if it was union problems, or there was a guy who basically wasn't giving the production what they needed. And she was like, this was a really good time that I was a woman producer, because she basically says that she turted herself up. Like, she's like, I wore a dress or a blouse cut down to here and really short skirt. And yeah, the guy, he agreed to what we wanted after that. I was like, oh, that's nice. That's good.
Good for you.
Got so many talented people. We've talked about the talented people in front of the camera, but so many talented people behind the camera. Talked about Joe Alves, talked about Dean Cundy, but just all of these folks just coming together. I mean, Carpenter and his crew were just such a well-oiled machine.
One of the DVD extras is about the train robbery, that was supposed to start the movie. And they have commentary with Carpenter and Kurt Russell. And Kurt Russell says, like, yeah, at this point we had to move really fast, and then the dolly broke down. And I remember you just taking the camera guy and putting him on a sound cart and rolling it. And this was a well-oiled machine. Like, they're all working at the top of their game and doing it so goddamned well. And we haven't even mentioned the music because, or we have sort of tangentially, but like, to me, this is Carpenter's absolute best score. It is so evocative and propulsive and fantastic. A couple of years ago, Carpenter went out on tour where he performed all of his scores with a live band. And he opened the concert here in Las Vegas with Escape from New York. And I swear to God, I left my body. It was so incredible.
It all comes together so well, and each of the different pieces of music just fit things so well. You mentioned the Duke of New York's theme. Oh, wow. When that starts coming up and it's just so fucking funky. I mean, it's funky enough that Isaac Hayes is not out of place. He's the grandmaster of funk, and it's appropriate that he is coming in with this music.
It's funky and menacing at the same time. and you just know whoever's about to show up is going to be the coolest person in the world.
To counter the cool score by Carpenter, and is it Alan Howarth also did the score on this one as well? To counter that with Bandstand Boogie that you hear several times through, and it works so well, especially that fucking ending. Just when Donald Pleasance finally gets the fucking egg on his face. Oh, I love the look on his face when he starts playing that tape.
A fitting end to this, mouthpiece of a president.
For me, in terms of the score, I feel like this is his most complete work. And when I say that, I mean, there are at least 4 different genres, I think, thrown around here through the course of the film, and he hits every one of them. He's got the very early going science fiction theme, then he's got horror, and then he's got straightforward action, and then he's got the Duke, which is a lot, it's a much more funkier vibe. All of that, plus whatever the hell that was at the end. Tie that all together. I mean, it's just like, it's so complete, and it's very rare to get such a complete score that's also distinctive, which is probably why Father Malone is saying that this is his best work. And I agree with that. It's just because it's so complete. Like, I love aspects of his other movies. Halloween theme is one of the best themes of all time. Like, as a whole, this does so many different things and accomplishes all of them that I think it's the most impressive.
My wife and I have this running debate. I'm trying to remember what movie we were just watching the other day, and I made a reference to like a song that was in the movie, and she was just like, I don't listen to music that's in the movies. What are you talking about? And then I know. Well, we come from very different backgrounds. Well, this morning I'm getting ready to leave for work, and I'm queuing up an audio commentary to listen to on the way, and it starts with the theme from Escape from New York, and she's just like, what is that? I know that. And I was just like, no, honey, you don't know the scores for movies. And I said, okay, try to guess what it was. And she actually guessed Escape from New York. So I was
nice.
Like, okay, so you do listen to them.
That's the one with sexy Kurt Russell. I think we know why she knows that one. He's shirtless a lot.
Well, and she does like Jason Statham. So that's why I think I've seen Ghosts of Mars more times than you guys have.
That's the only explanation.
I like Jason Statham, and I don't understand that aspect. I just don't. There's better movies. Find them. Watch Crank again or something.
Crank, fucking the Transporter films, even the second and third Transporter. Sure, I'll take it.
Yeah. Back to the fight with Ox Baker. You've heard the story from Kurt Russell, right, about that fight, I assume, but I don't know if people listening have.
I want to say he asked Ox to take it easy on him.
Yeah, he taps him on the groin. Like he pats he's told the story, and it's great when he tells it, because obviously it's his story, but he's getting his ass kicked in that cage because the guy isn't used to pulling punches, where Kurt Russell has been an actor for years before this. And so he's conditioned for it. Ox Baker is not. So he keeps connecting. And at one point he's just down, he just taps him on the groin and says, you got to take it easy. And it was fine after that. But I love that story, and people should seek it out if you can find it, but it's a great story to hear too.
Any commentary where you have Carpenter and Russell together talking, I mean, it's like what they are. They're old friends. Mm-hmm. And you can almost hear like the cracking of beers when they're talking. It just feels like two buddies getting together and shooting the shit. There are times, yes, they will go way off topic when they're doing their commentaries, but it is just a pleasure to listen to these two guys talk, no matter what movie it is. I highly encourage, to your point, if there's anybody that hasn't heard the commentary tracks for The Thing, Escape from New York,
Big Trouble
in Little China. I mean, they're such a pleasure to partake in.
The Thing in particular seemed like really fun. They never seem to skimp on information, but then they make you feel like you always hoped they were while making these movies and reassessing them. It's gone, MacReady. Like hearing Kurt Russell do Donald Moffat.
Yes.
It's pretty great.
Yeah, I mentioned before that this was the first action role from Kurt Russell, and the powers that be did not want him being the main guy. I think they were talking about Charles Bronson for a while. There were some other, names get bandied about all the time, but it was
Tommy Lee Jones, I think, was one.
Yeah, Tommy Lee Jones was another one. Yep.
the relationship that Russell and Carpenter had from the Elvis movie that they made a few years prior. And here he's sticking up for his buddy. He's like, no, he's going to be the perfect guy. And yeah, like to this point, like, okay, yes, he was in Used Cars where he's a scoundrel, but he's fucking hilarious. And before that, it's just like, he's coming from
Disney.
This Disney background. Yeah, he's the computer that wore tennis shoes. He's all of these great Disney roles throughout the years. He had never played this type of role. And after this, I mean, the guy can play anything, and he has played anything. He's played so many different types of characters. And I just absolutely love that they took this chance on him, that Carpenter was like, no, this is my guy, and started this, beautiful relationship of Kurt Russell being the tough guy now for Carpenter to direct, or flipping it on its head and being absolutely ridiculous in something like Big Trouble in Little China, which I also appreciated so much.
In that commentary about the train robbery sequence, Kurt Russell says that was the first sequence they shot for the movie. And after the third take, he said, John Carpenter came over to me and said, this fucking character's going to work.
Oh, God. There was another story. I don't know if it was a commentary or if it was just an interview where he said he was actually walking down. He was just walking down St. Louis and he just went down the wrong street or something. He had to carry his gear to go to set. And he came across an actual street gang or people that seemed like they would be in a street gang. And they looked concerned. And that's what you're talking about, right? Like that scene?
No. Actually, it was during the aborted opening scene when they were filming in the train station. He said like they did 3 takes of him sitting down on the train, just, throwing a couple of lines of dialogue. And then he realized that it was going to work as a character. But yeah, I have heard that story before where those guys were like, hey, take it easy, man. And once they saw Kurt Russell.
And speaking of the longevity of Kurt Russell, this is the part that I love. And I can probably talk about the guy for about 3 more hours if you got time. My kids are adults now. I had kids really young, and so my kids are now adults. And I've been around them and their friends, and they're watching movies and whatnot. And their friends and them, not just them because I forced them to watch Kurt Russell movies at a young age, but even their friends know who Kurt Russell is. They love Kurt Russell, and they can't see him as anything but the badass that he ended up being in all these movies. So it's crazy to even think there was a time when no one could see Kurt Russell as doing these characters.
Yeah, it says something about the powers that be, that how limited their view always seems to be. Like all they knew Kurt Russell was from, a series of Disney films and commercials and stuff. And he's like, well, he can't be this guy. Like not trusting his range as an actor, because as you said, Mike, he's played everything up to this point and he does it very well. He's a very skilled actor. And there's a scene once the chock full of nuts girls get pulled down and he's making his escape. Like you can see it's Kurt Russell smashing out a window, reaching out, pulling himself up onto a fireplace, or not a fireplace, but a fire escape. And then sort of climbing further up. And all I could think is like, we do have these distinctions of like action movie guys and like regular actors. But here's a guy who can do both and clearly can do it so well.
I love this whole thing of how he was like, yeah, John, when you asked me to be in this role, I was really glad that you thought I could lose 25 pounds so quickly. And that he looks like a badass. Just the snakeskin pants that he's got, that really tight top that he's got going on there. I mean, he looks just awesome in this movie. Just such an imposing character. The eye patch, the beard, the hair, just all of it comes together so well for the whole package with this guy.
And the eye patch was him. That wasn't the script.
Well, in the prequel, we'll get to find out how he loses the eye.
That was supposed to be a thing. They had like a planned series where they were this was recently, like within the past 10 years, where they wanted to do a television series telling of his earlier exploits, including the story of how he lost his eye.
Oh God.
Please don't
need
ever.
it. I don't need it.
I'm so glad.
Was this like with Gerard Butler? Was this like the Gerard Butler version?
American Mike.
I've never heard that. That's a real thing? They were going to do a TV prequel? I haven't heard that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even in the commentary that Deborah was doing with Joe, it was, I think theirs was recorded, I want to say, theirs was definitely recorded post Escape from LA, as opposed to the commentary that I think Russell and Carpenter did, which I think was pre Escape from LA. But yeah, she's like, oh, can you believe in this day and age where we can make Escape from LA and we've got a TV series and this and that? And I'm like, TV series? Okay. But yeah, there have been all these talks, and we'll talk about some of the escape froms that might have been, but did not happen.
And that kind of happened that shouldn't have.
Father Malone, you mentioned the snake tattoo, I believe.
Yeah, the slightly looks like a question mark. In fact, I had friends growing up who were convinced that it was a question mark because we never really see it in detail. But as far as I'm concerned, like, that's a good thing, because this guy, what's going on with him? Like, it's like down to that last detail with the snake, like, coming out of his pants, first of all. And secondly, like, registering a giant, question mark on who he is and what his motives are.
Yeah, I've always been curious what's going on below the waist there. Like, does the snake tail end someplace that we're thinking of? Is that tattooed as well, or how does that go?
Please don't make a prequel about the snake getting his tattoo.
Oh, they will. That would be a part. That'd be like the season finale if they had a series on it. They'd be like, this week we find out how Snake gets his tattoo.
Well, the thing is, what they're going to do is it's going to be like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It all happened on the same day. He got the tattoo.
Oh, yeah.
He lost the eye. He used to speak in a much higher voice. Just all of these things all happened at the same time, within like an hour or so.
Yes, on his way to Stalingrad.
Of course. I mean, I've heard remakes over and over, but prequel, I haven't heard that one. So that's interesting.
Oof.
You got to talk about the bridge, the ending, where they get the president back and he comes back in to the fold because he escapes after he does beat that big ass mofo. He does escape, and that affords him the opportunity to meet back up with his crew. That's a great escape.
Yeah, I think that whole sequence, the 69th Street Bridge, watching it even again today, it made me feel breathless, particularly when that music comes on, which is so sort of propulsive and mirroring the clock, like, ticking down. It's so, like, it's eerie at the start and then, sort of hard hitting by the end. But what a great scene overall.
And watching them all just basically get picked off one by one before they get to that wall. And also, you get that cutaway with Hawks. I think that was the part where Hawks got that giant ass walkie-talkie or phone, whatever the hell that thing was. And I'm like, God, this is the 80s, trying to be later in life.
Yeah, I love that they all die so quickly. It's just like one after another, after another, after another. And Snake and the president are the only ones that make it to the wall. And when the rope stops pulling him up, I'm just like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Like, my heart catches in my throat. I'm just like, what? No, don't, are they gonna fuck him over? What's going on? But no, it's so that the president can get his dick wet and start screaming, you are the Duke of New York, and start shooting up shit with a machine gun like he's some sort of tough guy.
I get it, though.
I do.
I understand where he's coming from. He's had to wear a wig. He's had to sit there and, just live this horrible, tortured prisoner of war life, which I guess Donald Pleasance really was, that was a fun fact I did not know. And for my fun, I mean interesting. I didn't know that he was. But that's a great scene. I love that scene when he just tears him apart from the wall.
That the scene where he pulls the wig off, that when Brain comes in and effectively steals the president, that's Romero's death scene. Man, oh man, he just right to the end, like, there's no shortage of great choices Frank Doubleday is making, where he's effectively crying as he's slinking to the ground. Oh my God. Or like, let me praise Doubleday even more. Like, when they're at the train scene, and this is where they cold cock Snake Plissken. When Romero comes off the train, he like swings out and then like puts his hand up like he's like looking in the distance, like very presentational, before he pulls his shirt open further and saunters away, throwing an accusatory finger back at Brain. Oh my God. If they're going to make a movie, make it about Romero.
I love that he's doing this thing, which, like horror directors do this whole thing, especially of like naming characters after other horror directors. But then we've got Romero and Dr. Cronenberg. I even like the Dr. Cronenberg character so much, John Strobel, this whole thing of him very reluctantly putting the stuff inside of Snake and then being like, tell him. And it's like, oh, that's nice. Like he was supposed to keep that on the down low, I think, because of the way that Hawk, when he's coming in, is like, oh yeah, we're going to give you a vaccine, and talks about how, disease-ridden New York is. I can't imagine that. But, and then Romero kind of turns the tables on him. It's just like, no, you got to tell him. You know, like, I don't feel, it's like, he doesn't say this, but you can read his mind of like, I don't ethically feel good about doing what I just did.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier, like, you know, with Hauk and Remy and Cronenberg as well, we do get these glimpses of there are decent people on both sides. Like, you know, there are people that end up helping him in the prison for whatever their reason is, that, you know, that are, you know, doing the right thing. And now we've got perfectly personified by Cronenberg, who does not clearly feel good about this at all. Like, you know, trying to do the right thing. So it isn't as like monolithic as like, you know, the fascist state that we're fighting against. Like, there's nuance throughout this entire script.
I think if Cabby took them to the wall, got everybody there safe and sound, that he would have stayed behind and been like, have a good night, Snake. I'll be here if you ever need me. You know, I don't see him leaving New York.
Definitely not.
Speaking of not leaving, I thought Maggie's turnabout to go back and basically face the Duke was a great moment. And also, it was a very important moment. Like, Adrienne Barbeau is just one of those actresses that I feel is eternally underrated. I always have. I just feel like she was great and deserved a lot more of a career than she ended up getting, but she's had a long standing career. But in terms of that particular role, it initially starts where it's almost like she's a gift, right? I mean, she's essentially a gift for Brain. So it comes across like maybe she really has no feelings for him. Maybe she's just, you know, I don't want to say prostitute, but essentially that. But as she plays the role and she has hardly any dialogue at all, she delivers so much more to the part than is ever on the page, I would assume. I mean, I didn't read the script, you did. But based on what dialogue she does have and what's said, she doesn't have a whole lot of dialogue. So she has to do everything a lot with facial gestures and whatnot. And that end, when it's finally firmly understood, she cares about Brain, and that just really broke her. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful moment that we don't talk about enough when we're talking about movies like this.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. What, like, her look, and she can't fathom the idea that Brain is gone, and sort of gleefully like meets her end, you know? Like, even if she's not going to hit him, she's doing it in the service of the guy she loved.
She's that strong female character that we were talking about last week. You know, she is Leigh from the police station. She's just like, basically, it's like if Leigh and Napoleon had gotten together. Like, this is her bad boy, and he ends up dying, and then she has to defend him. I love that. I love that she's not just brain squeeze, that she is so much more.
And cynical to boot. You're Plissken? Like, this is it? This is what we've been hearing about?
I love that delivery. That was so good.
Oh, she's so
And you know, the sort of running joke of, I heard you were dead, like, everyone sort of makes a presentation out of it except her. She kind of throws it away as she's just leading him to Brain, like, heard you were dead.
And yeah, I absolutely love the end of this movie. Like I talked about with the look on Donald Pleasance's face, and just Snake walking away, pulling the tape out of the cassette. Oh, it's so good. And just that he wins. He ends up winning. Even though so many people died, he ends up winning. And at the end of the day, that's all we can really hope for, is that he's going to win.
Do you feel like if the president would have answered the question that when Snake is basically questioning him and he's like, hey, what do you think about the other people that lost their lives for you? If he would have answered it in a more empathetic way, that he would have given him the correct tape?
I think so.
I think so too.
I want to thank you. Anything you want, you just name it.
Just a moment of your time.
3 minutes, sir.
Yes?
We did get you out. A lot of people died in the process. I just wondered how you felt about it.
Well, I want to thank them. This nation appreciates their sacrifice. Look, I'm on the air in 2.5 minutes.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I love that we even get that moment where any other action film, he would have said some smart-ass thing and just wandered away. But here he's, you know, looking for a deeper meaning. And like, was this all worth it? And clearly it wasn't, because this guy doesn't give a shit about anything.
I like in the, cause they continued the story in the comic books, and I like that they have, impeached the Donald Pleasance character after the fiasco that happened.
Oh, really?
With the tape. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. It was pretty nice. Yeah. The comics are, and maybe talk about this a little bit more in the second half of the show. The comics are interesting because they revisit some things. They put them on new paths in other ways. There's at least like 2 runs of things. There's like Escape from New York, which is like a 4-volume series. And then it's like Escape from Florida, Escape from Leningrad, Escape from, I can't remember the other 2. Each one has a different theme going on. And then there was another one which was more of a continuation. I mean, they're both kind of continuations, but I'm trying to remember what that one was called. That one was from 97. The other one was from the early 2000s. And then, yeah, I was looking, and the TV series was supposed to be, I think they said 100 episodes. Plans for a 100-episode series were proposed by Russell, Carpenter, and Deborah Hill in the early 2000s. All 3 would have served as executive producers, but Russell wasn't expected to reprise his role as Snake. Unfortunately, the proposed series was turned down by every major network. This is back when we still had networks, because it was supposedly too dark and bleak. So it sounds like it would have been perfect for Netflix, right?
Yeah,
yep,
right
do it
now.
again.
Sure.
Do it. Get that deal. One aspect with the ending that I have always appreciated was that you get a little bit more insight into the character, like how he negotiates his life at the end. Because at the very beginning, when he's dealing with Hawk, he's call me Snake. You know, when he's entertaining the idea of actually negotiating with him and working with him and what's the deal, the whole thing. But at the end, when he realizes you're a piece of shit, you're an asshole, I don't want anything to do with you, it switches to Plissken. And I love that. You have, and he does the same thing in Escape from LA, which is, you know, essentially a remake, but whatever. I love that little minor dialogue anecdote. I just thought that was a great little touch that most writers wouldn't even think of. It's just very clever.
And a circularity, because his first line is "Call me Snake,"
and his last line is "Call me Plissken."
The name's Plissken.
The name's Plissken.
All right, guys, we're going to take a break and play a trio of interviews. First up, we're going to hear from the co-screenwriter of Escape from New York, Nick Castle. After that, we'll hear from Maggie herself, Adrienne Barbeau. And last but not least, we will hear from production designer Joe Alves. And we'll be back with all of that right after these brief messages. Where'd you grow up and how'd you decide to become a filmmaker?
I grew up in Los Angeles. My father was in the motion picture industry. He moved from New York to Los Angeles in the 30s. He was a tap dancer in vaudeville and then went on to choreograph acts in New York. And then, as they say, brought his talents to Los Angeles. Then he became a very famous choreographer, worked with a lot of the greats, Judy Garland, Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly, a lot of movies. I would go on the sets with him, and you know, so I was very much influenced by his career, and he went on to TV, and when I would go with him to those sets, things like that. I went to USC Film School based on my interest in general in film and TV, and that's how it all started. My dad's best friends were also in show business as well, and my godfather was married to Betty Hutton, and then divorced her and married Patty Page. You know, so there was a lot of characters running around the house, and my dad, he had some famous guests over at the house. So that was kind of as part of the world as well.
When did you go to USC? What year was that?
68? Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's true. It's actually the year my father passed away. A friend of mine got in first and, you know, suggested I go, and we started doing these little Super 8 movies, and then I decided, because I was not in school at that point, but just working with him on his projects, and then wound up going that fall, I believe.
Can you tell me how the resurrection of Bronco Billy came about?
Sure. Actually, that same person that I was just referring to, John Longenecker, was the producer on the short. It was his idea when we became kind of in our senior project to try to get what he's considered, you know, like a super team, you know, and that included John, myself, himself, and Jim Rokos, who wound up directing. That we kind of came together and just threw out ideas. There wasn't a script or an idea to begin with. I think the reason Jim wound up being the director is he had kind of a notion, you know, all kind of filled in the gaps. I was the director of photography. John Carpenter was the editor. Jim was, like I said, the director, and John Longenecker, the producer. And, it's one of those student films that didn't, it wasn't as clearly delineated sometime to the detriment of the tenor of the production itself. But in any case, who was in charge? It was pretty interesting that it all came about. It's the producer also was instrumental in getting Johnny Crawford involved because he was a friend from before that project, and his dad was a casting director, mainly for TV and commercials. So we were able to get some good second leads and things like that. John also knew Chris Harmon, who was who played the female lead. And, we shot it, I think, I forget, in the spring. And John then, Longenecker, again, was really pivotal in taking the movie and forcing it basically into a position to be looked at by the Academy. The school itself didn't think much of it, I guess, at least didn't put it on their priority list to push it for Academy consideration. John did that on his own and raised the money. Lo and behold, there it was, and we won the award.
Was that your first time working with John Carpenter, or had you done student films with him?
Might have been the first time we worked together on a project. We were also on, we went through our various classes together doing Super 8 movies, which were all done by each individual person. Then we split up into 3-person crews in our kind of sophomore year. I wasn't on his team, but, we were all very close and were that class and did a lot of work in the sense of, talking about critiquing and suggesting ideas for people that we knew and worked with. But that indeed would be the first real credited picture I worked with John on.
So what happens after you graduate?
Before we graduated, John started Dark Star there at USC Film School as a short. And I worked with him and Dan O'Bannon as basically, an assistant. It's just they needed arms and legs and people to help do things. I didn't have much of a creative input in that, but I had fun with them. And they did that. And then, lo and behold, again, John, you need one person in that group to have some kind of ambition and a sense of how to take their first steps out of that world and into the real world of motion pictures. And he had a pretty good sense of that. And so he got someone to give him some more money to make it into a feature. And we went off and did some more work. And my claim to fame on that one really is that I sat behind the beach ball monster, the thing that looked like a beach ball that was pink like a tomato, and kind of gave it some life. My first foray in doing behind the scenes or behind the plastic work.
When does Escape from New York come into your orbit?
John actually just called me out of the blue one day. He had already done a couple movies, including Halloween, of course. So, we kept in touch, and, I would show him what I was doing in terms of screenplays and things like that. And always interested in what he was up to, of course, because he got off to such a fast start. For that particular picture, he just called me up and said, yeah, what are you doing? I need someone to help me on this project. I just am kind of burnt out just doing these other movies, and I really need someone to bounce off ideas. And I said, I'd love to. So he was very gracious and generous in terms of including me in that project. He had written the script right out of film school, was my memory of it. And it really was, I think, his first screenplay, and he just put it in the drawer when he got other things going. And then when he finished whatever it was, The Fog or something, one of the companies said, well, what else do you got? And he pulled it out and said, this is the idea, and they loved it. But it needed quite a bit of work. So that's what John asked me to do. Come over his house until we kind of marched through the whole script, figured out what needed to be worked on and what needed to change, what was good, what was not good, and get it into fighting shape, That's what we did. We lived very close to each other. Both of us were in Laurel Canyon in Los Angeles, blocks away. We still had to drive, but I'd just go over there. We'd sit around his pool or his living room and, toss out ideas. And he was very much the hands-on person, though. He's the one that took the ideas and put them into script form.
What was that early version like? Do you remember?
I don't really. I would be guessing now. I don't have a clear image of it. I know I know what we added to it was we just took, the concept of being in New York itself wasn't as utilized as it should be, and what it was eventually used is, let's use some of the iconic images and what you do in New York, and let his journey kind of go like a tourist would do in New York, going to a show, going to this, that, going to Madison Square Garden. What is it going in a ride with a taxi driver? Anything that was iconic was not necessarily thought in those terms in the first draft, as I recall. And that's what we brought to the next thing. And also a little bit more humor, I think. John's funny too, by the way, and that's not just me that would add some humor to this thing, but that's probably part of my influence as well.
I read an earlier draft, and I've seen the scene that was shot as far as that robbery at the beginning. When was the decision made to scrap that?
I don't know. I wasn't there when they shot that, so that'd be a John question. I really don't know if that was. I don't even remember it being in my draft, frankly. And not sure, actually.
Was the character of Snake Plissken pretty much the way that he ended up being in those early drafts that you worked on?
I think so. That was pretty much a part of the charm of the original idea, was that kind of gruff character. We probably added even a little bit more nihilism to his character. We went on. And of course, Kurt is the one that really brought his own interpretation of that, kind of an Eastwood kind of character, and gave it that physicality. Yeah, I think in general, I would say that's where that character was. The character's name actually was taken, Plissken, Snake Plissken, as a matter of fact, was borrowed, I suppose you could say, from a friend of ours, another student at USC, who John remembered had talked to us about our old high school chum, whose name was Plissken, and he called himself the Snake. That just stuck in John's mind, I suppose, and he said, what a great name for this.
So what were you doing while they were shooting Escape from New York?
I was here for most of, if not all, of the Los Angeles shoot. And when they went to New York to do the bit around the Statue of Liberty, I was there too. So I, like I did with Halloween, I asked John, would he mind if I just hung around and be basically part of the crew? And, if I had come up with any ideas or spot something, while we're shooting, just, throw in an idea or here or there. But mainly just to be, again, to kind of immerse myself in that process, since I wanted to be a director myself. So it was a rich experience. But in general, I didn't do anything in St. Louis. I didn't go there. But everything that was done in L.A., I think I was here for. And then I was in at one of the scenes, actually, playing the piano at the Wiltern, or whatever that is, theater in Los Angeles. That song was, Deborah had thought she had got the rights to Everything's Coming Up Roses, from Gypsy. And that's what we sang there. And then afterwards, after it was shot and finished and edited, she went, uh-oh, we don't have it. Can you? And so she asked me if I would rewrite it in the kind of meter, and even that there was any way I could try to make it look like we weren't, the lip sync wouldn't look too weird. So that's when I wrote the new song it's kind of almost a parody of that song, but that was what Deborah asked me to do, which I wound up doing in post-production.
What was it like working with Deborah Hill?
She's just she's a great producer, because she's a real rooter. She was like, for the film, very optimistic. And she also was, I didn't work with her in the capacity as the line producer work that she had done, but I always heard really good things about that. Sometimes that could be a tough job, because you have to say no to a lot of people, and you have to, bargain with people and things like that. That's a toughie. But she seemed to do that very well and had a good rapport with the crew. I think all the crew loved her. And of course, she was just very, very, very smart, and had, I'm sure, worked with John even after their personal relationship ended. They still had a good, long friendship.
I know you've probably been asked this 1,000 times, so pardon me for being 1,001. How did you end up being the Shape in Halloween?
I have answered that a zillion times, but but not everyone knows. That's okay. Knowing John, John was shooting the movie in Los Angeles. We're still close friends after film school. One of the areas they were shooting in was, and doing some pre-production work, was basically near our neighborhood in Hollywood. And I went down to the set just to check it out and say hi. And I said, "Hey, John, what if I just hung around while you guys shot? This is, I just wanted to see if that was okay with him." And, again, for the reasons I said before, which was to kind of demystify the experience so that I'd have something under my belt when I got to direct myself. And so he said, fine. And he said, well, I got an idea. Why don't you be this guy, the killer? You put on the mask and you walk around, and you have to be here anyhow. And then that's one other less person I have to cast. And I said, okay. It was really offhanded. And of course, it's hilarious because in my retirement, that's basically what I've been doing, is being the shape for a lot of fans and, writing autographs and going to some of these crazy horror conventions, having it's a remarkable circumstance to have done that so many years ago, just on a whim. And then it to turn out to be this iconic horror character. It's just crazy.
Did I read that you came back and did that in the 2018 film?
Yeah, I did a cameo in that. Actually another cameo in the next one that's coming out too. They made me kind of a mascot. And it's fun, and the fans love it. They think it's hilarious that, Nick Castle is still giving his okay to these new films and being part of them. So I think it worked out for everybody. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. And also meeting a lot of nice people, including the director there, David Gordon Green, who's real talented, a good guy. I have a little bit of input too on those things. He sends me the script and I come up with some ideas, which he'll take to heart. So it's fun to be, to stretch myself a little bit again in that world.
I am a big fan of movies of the ilk of Prey TV, and I do remember watching Prey TV back in the early 80s. How did you get involved with that one?
I had a next door neighbor who was friends with the person that would eventually be the director, Rick Friedberg, and he was looking around for some comedy writers. I'm not sure his relationship with Dick Chudnow, but Dick was part of the team that brought Kentucky Fried Theater, Wisconsin, to Los Angeles with the Zuckers. Of course, they went on to do Airplane and things like that. Dick wound up moving away from that team, and he got on board. So three of us got together and kind of, Rick had an idea about doing a comedy based on religious television. And we spent quite a bit of time going through a number of drafts, and then Rick went out and found some dough to do it. Two of them are very close friends still, so it was a wonderful experience. And again, more importantly, I made Chudnow especially is like my best friend now, and he lives in Milwaukee. He went on to do a group called Comedy Sports. It's an improv group that has chapters all around the country, and in London too, I think. Made a great living at that, and now is retired and trying to stay out of. I just got his COVID shot, so good. Hope he'll live a few more years. I can see him again.
Tell me, how was that first experience for you directing when you ended up doing Tag?
Well, it was great. Another, it's you just have to keep your eyes open when you're trying to make that transition from film school to, the movies, the real movies. Well, I guess they're real movies when you do film school too, but the pain type, that was, again, from a contact with a neighbor who basically said they have an idea and they want to know if you'll write a treatment that they could go get some money for. And I said, no. I said, I'm not going to do that again. I do that for free all the time. He says, well, what if you attach yourself as director? And I went, shit, okay, I'll give it a shot. And so it was just a magazine article about what was really going on college campuses with this kind of dart game that was being played as a kind of a James Bond spy game. live action game on the campuses, which God forbid would ever happen now. Can you imagine people running around with the campus? That would not happen anymore. In any case, that was big. It was a big deal, on some campuses. In any case, so yeah, it seemed like, let's come up with an idea. And the obvious one to me was doing where one guy goes crazy and starts really shooting people. That's an interesting, actually, thing about that was the producers were very impressed with the fact that I had done Escape from New York and that I was a writer on that. That really gave me some credibility as a director because, of course, I didn't have anything but a few shorts that weren't particularly applicable to what they were looking for. And I got John to write me a letter saying, this guy would be a great director. and of course, I wrote it. I wrote it, and he signed it. We sent that in. And again, it's like out of the blue. The guy had, whatever it was, $1 million to do it. And that's how it started. And then it was pretty much a straight ahead production with something I would wind up doing show after show, casting and finding locations. We shot it mainly on the UCLA campus, which I was very familiar with because I used to live near it. Linda Hamilton's first feature. Bobby Carradine was great in it. And the cameraman was an interesting casting in a sense. He was from France and he had done some great work. His reel was so much further advanced than anybody that I was able to afford or get. And I thought he was really instrumental in making the film interesting, and the look was very good. And then the other thing I thought that was a real lucky break was getting Craig Sasson, who's the composer, to do the music, because I thought that lent so much more depth to the project. And he went on to do Last Starfighter and a bunch of other of my movies, and still is a close friend.
I was curious about your relationship with James Hart, because I know you guys are credited on a few things together, Hook and August Rush, if I remember, and I'm not sure what else.
I think that's it. I did a movie with Gary Adelson, the producer for TriStar, called Tap, about tap dancing with Gregory. And the company liked it a lot. They basically asked, what else you got? And Gary had met Jim on his own and told me about an idea that Jim had, which was to be Hook. We went, Jim and myself and Gary went into TriStar and pitched the idea, and the studio liked it a lot, and they wanted me to shepherd, the writing of the screenplay, because there was no screenplay at that point, just basically a pitch, as I recall at least. So Jim and I worked, I don't know how long, months and months and months on various drafts of the thing and coming up with new ideas and ways to go. It worked out very, very well. Jim did a great job. And, we went on to cast it. Then circumstances changed where I wasn't able to be the director on it. As you know, Stephen did it. So that was the extent of my participation in that. I was working on the script and this and that. And then when Jim just coincidentally was asked to do a draft after I did my screenplay of August Rush. And when he realized that he was going to do some work, called me up, make sure I was okay with everything. And so we talked about the next steps that he was going to put in. And then we just kept in touch since then and during the course of the production. So, Jim has some fantastic ideas. He's a very clever guy and a wonderful screenwriter.
Have you been involved much in punching up screenplays or things where you're not listed, but you definitely had a hand working on stuff?
Not to the extent, I would say, where I was the doctor that was brought in to work a project. I mean, that was independent of a credit. I mean, I kind of think of August Rush in a way like that, because there was an original screenplay which which didn't work. I didn't think I didn't take advantage, at least, of what was available to the story idea. And I basically pitched an idea to the producer of how to make it work, and I said, but I want to direct it, and he didn't want to commit to that, so I walked away from it. But about 6 months later, I think I was doing nothing or something, and I thought, God, I really could make that thing work. I'm going to call him, see if he still needs help on it, because at least can get done, and even if I don't wind up directing it. So that's actually how that happened. I was just like, it feels a little like what you're saying, but I know you're looking for some other thing. No, I think the closest would be maybe a little bit like what David's giving me the privilege to do, is read the Halloween scripts and coming up with any ideas I have. So that's fun, of course.
Were you involved at all when there was the lawsuit going on about Lockout and Escape from New York?
No. So I got some kind of financial settlement for that. That all was done through John's company and his lawyers. But I was just kind of like, okay, just kind of send me. I'll take it.
Were you asked to come back and work on Escape from LA at all?
No, I'm forgetting. What year? Do you remember what year that was?
I think it was 96 it came out. So they're probably working on it, 95, 94?
Yeah. So I was probably doing either Major Pain or Mr. Wrong around that time. And probably, but so I would have been busy, but I don't remember a discussion even having. I think Kurt really was the driving force of that somehow. And probably, so they again, while I have a certain sense of ownership of the original, it's still something I always think of as John's project. He could do whatever the heck he wants with it. He was so generous to begin with, and it was such an important part of the stepping stones in my career. It's that kind of situation where whatever John wants to do, it's fine with me. And I don't even remember at the time knowing it was going on, actually. So I think I get some kind of credit, though. That's cool. They're always threatening to do another version of that, aren't they, or a remake?
They've threatened that at least. I think I've seen it in print about 4 or 5 different times now, and every few years it's like, no, this director's attached, and it's going to be this guy playing Snake, and then it switches up every few years.
Yeah. Oh man, that's hilarious.
So when you're not donning your jumpsuit and being the Shape these days, what are you working on?
I'm basically retired. I decided that, it's enough of this. I don't have, I don't have to go through the anxiety of dealing with, it could be even very nice studio heads, but all the anxiety in that world can be pretty overbearing. But that being said, it's a fantastic art form, and I kind of miss it. So a couple of times, the answer to that is I don't do anything in terms of trying to continue a career. I'm fine with the things that I love doing, independent of that. But a couple of people have come back to me over the years and have asked me to direct or write things. And a few years ago, I did. A woman came to me and wanted me to do a screenplay based on a true life event. And I did that. And at the moment, there's some real interest in moving forward with it. It's a movie, and it's interesting how things work out, because this was written about, 9 years ago. It's about a small town in Tennessee where the schools are going to be integrated. And it's about the 2 basketball teams, black school and the white school, playing for the first time in the championships, and it's all kinds of anxiety going on. How do you quell that? And so it's a wonderful story. It's a true story. I already did some pre-production kind of casting of it, and I think they're trying to get the rest of the money. So maybe something like that will happen. The guy from London called me, wanted to do this comedy, which was pretty cute. So, I might get back in the saddle again, but I'm not holding my breath.
Well, Mr. Castle, thank you so much for your time. This was great talking with you.
Oh, it was nice meeting you.
I have to thank you so much for the wonderful autobiography that you wrote. It was just delightful to read.
Oh, thank you. I'm not sure I have any more answers for you about Escape than you read in the book, but we'll try.
I did want to know, when it came to Escape from New York, how aware of that project were you before it really even got off the ground? From what I understand, that script had been kind of kicking around for a little bit before it finally got the green light.
I don't remember reading it before John handed it to me. You're saying that, and now I'm thinking, John wrote it, right? It was John and Nick, wasn't it? They have Yeah, no, I don't think I mean, it wasn't like he finished writing it and handed it to me and said, "What do you think?" I don't remember any of that. So it was probably great. We're going to make this movie and take a look. But honestly, I have no recollection.
When you did get handed the script, was it like, here you go, you're going to be Maggie, or was it, see if there's something in here you like? No, I'm sure, and that I don't know, but I'm sure he wrote the role of Maggie for me, and the only reason I say that is because, as you know, maybe if you read the memoir, I mean, I met him on Someone's Watching Me, and he hired me because I think he was a Maude fan, I think, or he knew me from Maude, and he saw in me the possibility of playing the kind of character that he liked to write, the Howard Hawks woman, And so I do remember him handing me the script for The Fog, because I was incredibly disappointed that it wasn't a socially significant film, never having seen a horror film in my life. But I'm sure he wrote Maggie for me, because by that time we had already done the 2 films together. We were together as a couple, and he knew I could do that kind of kick-ass character, I guess. I just rewatched The Fog, and it's so interesting that you are throughout that film, and your voice is so important throughout that film, but you don't really get to interact with very many other actors at all. No. In fact, someone asked me when Hal died last week, someone asked me how was it working with him and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And although I did work with him on Creepshow, I mean, I had no scenes with Hal. I've done 4 movies, I think it is, maybe 5, 4 at least, with Tom Atkins. No scenes with Tom. And even in Escape, somebody was asking about Donald Pleasance, and what was it like being on the set when he had to wear the blonde wig and they were shooting at him? And I thought, I don't think I was in those scenes, and so I couldn't answer. Yeah, you seem to spend most of your time with Harry Dean Stanton. How was he to work with? Harry Dean was great. I was with Ernie too, and of course Kurt. But Harry Dean was great. John, at that time, at least, I don't know what his directing was like with his later films, but John's not a big advocate of ad-libbing or going off script or anything. And I do remember Harry sort of, well, couldn't I say this? And so John would sort of had to rein him in a little bit. But that's about all I remember about Harry. What I remember mostly is I remember Isaac being just such a gentleman. We didn't have a lot of off-screen time where we got to know each other or anything, but he was very gentle, and that's sort of the image, the impression I have of him still. And Donald was, probably one of the funniest actors I've ever worked with, funniest men I've ever worked with that dry British wit. And invariably he would say something right before we'd start filming. And I'd have to say, John would say, okay, roll him, or action. I'd say, wait, you've got to stop. Give me a second to get myself back together again, because Donald would just crack me up. My favorite story, or one of my favorite stories about Donald, was when we first checked into the hotel in downtown St. Louis. The receptionist who was checking us in said, this is not a good neighborhood. You should not walk around here. It's dangerous. Don't walk around here. Donald wanted to go to a Chinese restaurant that he had heard about, and so he went out the front door and he called a cab. And the cab drove him around to the back of the hotel, which is where the restaurant was, and dropped him off, And then Ernie was preparing a one-man show at the time. I don't remember what the format was, but
I just have an image every day. I'd come back from work and he'd be sitting in the lobby with his script because he was anxious about memorizing an hour and a half worth of dialogue, a monologue basically. And he was also, the whole cast was great. They were all wonderful. But Harry Dean, I probably didn't spend as much time with as I did with Donald, and I knew Kurt. Of course, we had been friends since I met John. And Season, we were good friends. We socialized with Kurt and Season all the time, and they just had Boston, the baby. But Harry Dean, I just have that one image in my head of us getting ready to do something, or him starting the scene, and he was, moving around with the words, and John said, "No, let's bring it back, let's get back to the words on the page."
It's such an interesting film to have Kurt Russell, who, if memory serves, that was his first action role, right?
Oh yeah, and you probably know from your research. I mean, it finally came down to John saying, if you don't take Kurt, you don't have the movie, because Avco Embassy wanted Charles Bronson, and Tommy Lee Jones was being discussed, but Charles Bronson one of the two of them was angling for it, and the studio wanted it, and John had directed Kurt in Elvis, but up until that time, he was pretty much known as a Disney actor. He certainly wasn't an action hero, but John got his way, or they wouldn't have had the script.
When did they figure out that people weren't clear on your death?
The story that I heard is that John put the film together. We finished shooting, and he did his editing and put the film together. He screened it. I don't recall being at the screening, but he screened it for the studio execs, and it's my understanding, and I have tried to reach him several times to confirm it, but I have never been able to, that J.J. Abrams was a teenager at the time, and his dad, I think, was maybe an executive for Avco Embassy, or for whatever reasons, J.J. Abrams was at the screening. And the story I've heard, not from the horse's mouth, is that, when it was over, he raised his hand and said, "Well, what happened to Maggie? I mean, is she dead? Is she not dead? Is she, blah, blah, blah." And so we got a very small film crew together, and we came to John and my house in Studio City, and we pulled our cars out of the garage. I put the original costume on. I still have the boots, by the way. I still wear the boots. I still wear the boots. They're one of my favorites. I roasted another turkey breast so I could have the hair clip that I had made to wear in my hair. And we stretched me out on the floor of the garage and put some blood around me, and he took that last shot, which effectively eliminated the possibility of my being in the sequel, but, strengthened the scene and strengthened the film.
I guess I could have cloned you or something. I'd read in a few places that you're the voice of the computer in both Judge Dredd and Demolition Man. Is that true?
It is true, and the only reason I can tell you that it is true is because I still get residuals. I have no recollection of doing the roles, especially Judge Dredd. I don't even. Is that another Stallone film?
It is, yeah, which is why I thought it was a little suspect, because I think it might have been maybe like the next film or two films later for him.
Well, I don't know. Do I have credit on IMDb?
You're not credited, but I had read that before, and it sounds kind of like your voice.
I know I get residuals for Demolition Man. I believe I have gotten residuals for Judge Dredd, but don't take my word for it.
Can you tell me about when you actually got to record your own CD?
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess it was in the late 80s. The CD came out. I was pregnant with the boys when I was recording it. In fact, I did my last concert at about 6 months pregnant. So the boys were born in '97. So we were recording the CD around in 97, and I think it was released that year. But in the late 80s, I had a cabaret act, and I'd do that when I wasn't doing anything else. And then at some point, somebody said, we should have an album based on the tunes that you were doing in the cabaret act. So did the album.
It's funny to me that your autobiography ends with you going to a writing class, and then I know that you've written several books afterwards, the vampire series.
Yes. When my memoir came out, and if you read, it sounds like you read the paperback cover or the hardbound. You didn't read the Kindle, because I did do a revised version for Kindle maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I don't know. It's been maybe even more than that. I mean, I love physical books, and but I was approached by an e-publisher saying, let's do an update on the memoir, because she was also publishing the vampire novels. So I did do a little update on the memoir. But you asked me about, so how did I go on to write the 3 vampire novels? When the memoir came out, when There Are Worse Things I Could Do came out, I was approached by an Irish author who had many, many books published in the UK and Ireland, and hadn't had, I don't know if he'd had anything published here. He was very familiar with the horror genre and sci-fi, and he had written many things across the board, even romance and children's books. And he said, I love the memoir, but you wrote the wrong book. I said, what? I'm sorry, what do you mean? And he said, you should write a book for your horror genre fan base. You should write a horror novel or a science fiction or something like that. And I said, well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm a storyteller. I mean, the memoir, I knew all those stories. I knew how they began and end, and he said, well, I'll work with you on it. And so we sat down. He said, what do you want to, what kind of thing do you want to do? And it's not a genre, the vampire genre certainly was not a genre I had ever read, except for George R.R. Martin's book, Fever Dream, which George Romero had given to me in the early 80s because he was interested in bringing it to the big screen, and he wanted to know what I thought. And I loved it. But I was not I didn't know anything about vampires. I'd never seen Dracula or anything like that. But I wanted to write about what I knew, and what I know is, strong women, my industry, Armenian, and mysteries, because I'm a nonstop serial mystery reader, detective novels, legal courtroom dramas, Robert Parker, John Sanford, Michael Connelly, Robert Crace, Nelson DeMille, that's what I know, is those kinds of things. So together we created Vampires of Hollywood, which is about a 450-year-old Armenian vampire who happens to be the head of a small movie studio in Los Angeles. It's actually in Santa Clarita, where we filmed Carnival. And she's the star of 17 blockbuster horror films and a couple that just went straight to DVD. And her clan includes the A-list Hollywood actors, some of whom have passed and some of whom are still alive. Orson Welles and Mary Pickford and Robert Downey Jr. and Elvis, and someone is killing off the A-list Hollywood actors, her clan, her vampire clan. So she eventually teams up with a Beverly Hills detective who finally discovers her true identity, and they go about trying to figure out who's killing off her clan. So that was Vampires of Hollywood. And then we got a publishing deal from St. Martin's for 2 novels. Well, when time came to write the second one, my co-author wasn't available. And so I wrote the second one myself, Love Bites. I think that's probably my favorite of the series. And eventually that was optioned for a feature by Harrison Smith, who directed Death House and a bunch of, horror films. I think he has one out right now that's making the rounds called The Special. And Harrison, optioned it and then said, how do you feel about us co-writing the screenplay? So we did. So he is now in the process of shopping that. But the series is a trilogy, and so I finished writing Love Bites, and my publisher came to me, my ebook publisher came to me and said, you got to write the third one in this. So I wrote Make Me Dead, which is just available as for Kindle or a notebook or whatever they call. And so that was my writing career. I am now, and this is I'm working on something right now that we're in talks with a publisher, but it will be a nonfiction book about the Broadway musical Grease. And that's all I can say about it until we can go a little farther. I'm co-writing that with the original director of Grease, Tom Moore, and the producer.
Oh, great. Has that been what's keeping you busy during the pandemic?
Yes. Oh, my God, yes. Yeah. That, and I do a lot of video captioning for the blind for films and television series. And so, and I can do most of that from my home, too. So I've been very, very fortunate to be able to keep creating and have something to keep me busy besides mopping the floors and emptying the dishwasher, which I'm really tired of.
And it just fills up again.
I realized this morning it's the repetition that you don't usually experience when you're leaving the house to go to work, or, you've got to do this, or you can run errands, or you can do this. But it's the constant repetition of certain tasks, like emptying the dishwasher, that finally started. I find that I'll empty half the dishwasher and then I'll go off and do something else and then come back and empty the rest because I just don't want to repeat the same motions over and over again, which is why I'm an actor. You never know what you're going to be doing.
I was curious if you were doing more voice acting, if you have a recording studio at home, because I know you've done a lot of voice work over the years.
I just finished doing a very interesting genre musical. I'm trying to remember how we all describe it. Let's see if I can find. It's a 10-episode radio show, a musical about the genre wars. Manhattan is now, or New York City is now the 5 boroughs. And there's the one that is controlled by the fan size, and the one that is controlled by the Hepburners who like black and white movies, and the one that is controlled by, the cartoonists. And it's quite unique, sort of delightful. It's called The World to Come. And I believe the first 5 episodes are already available. It's a podcast. But mine will not drop until March 15th, the episode that I did, and then she may be recurring. So that was fun to do. I went into a studio for that one, but I do most of my video captioning from here at the house. I don't know if you're familiar with Source Connect, but it is, I guess you'd call it an app. I don't know. It's a program where my producer can be in his house and the engineer is in the studio and I'm in my studio and all I'm doing is reading the script and they're recording it and the producer is listening to it and then coming back and saying, okay, we need a retake on that line, you need to say it faster or whatever. That really freed us up. We turned to that when the pandemic hit.
I think you have stuff coming up this afternoon, so I don't want to keep you too long, but I just wanted to tell you how delightful this was to talk with you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Tell me about your experience working with John Carpenter on Escape from New York.
That was interesting. What happened was Phil Gersh was my agent. He was a big-time agent in Hollywood. He used to handle Humphrey Bogart and all these big actors in the 50s. And later in his career, he decided to handle production designers and camera people and stuff, and some producers and directors and stuff. And anyway, I directed, just briefly, a sequence in Jaws where the little kid eats the raft, the shark eats the raft. And then I storyboarded all that stuff. So when I got to Jaws 2, bringing a director in that I knew quite well, and I had been responsible for him getting the job, and we were behind schedule because we wanted a certain release in the summer. So I ended up doing a lot of second unit directing. Probably, I think, 85 days of second unit of shark going through the canopies and various things. So my head was into directing, and I wanted to make that transition. I had a movie called Out in Front. It's about Formula One racing. And I had been racing Formula 2 cars in this country. So Bill Gilmore was vice president of some company, I can't remember the name now, Amoco or something. Anyway, so he liked the idea, and we went scouting to all the courses, Formula One courses in Europe, Monte Carlo, in England, France, whatever. And we came back, and the company had sold to somebody else, and so that was canceled. A week later, my father died, and it was just really sad. And my agent called me, and he says, "You got to go back to work. You got to go design something." And he says, "There's this young couple that he represents, Deborah Hill and John Carpenter. I think you should talk to them." They were making movies that cost $300,000. You know, what did they make? Two big movies, but they were very small budget. Halloween and the other one, I can't remember. Anyway, I met with them, and they said, "This is going to be a big budget. We get $5 or $6 million." And I thought, "Oh, okay, not too big," but they were going to pay me the same amount of money that I was making. I had a really good relationship with Deborah Hill. She was a real go-getter. She was like, "We're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to get it," very aggressive, but I liked her. John was more laid back. He smoked a little pot, and yeah, okay, well, we'll get to that, And I said, well, okay, I broke the script down, which if you saw my Jaws book, you'll see a script breakdown there, and you go through the script and you write down, and then you make little notes or little sketches. And I said, well, look, we got this thing where you need a bridge and a big wall. So you needed a big wall and build a bridge, or you need a bridge and then build a wall. And that's sort of like an important part of the of that set. So I said, we should start scouting for bridges. And Barry Bernardi was the location guy. He later became a pretty successful producer. He says, "Oh, yeah, we're going to get to it." And I said, "John," and I think my relationship with John at first was I was too aggressive. I was used to, I just built the biggest set ever at that time in Guinness Book of Records. And you got to get started. You got to plan these things. So being older, I was probably 10 years older than everybody because they were pretty young. So Barry says, "Okay, well, there's a bridge in St. Louis that they're not using." So I said, "Let's fly to St. Louis." So I went to St. Louis, and I saw this bridge, and it was a nice bridge. And I said, okay, I could build a wall, 200-foot wall, 50 feet high or whatever, at the end of the bridge. And what happened is, because of his Escape from New York, Larry Franco was the first assistant, and John and I flew to New York, and we climbed the Twin Towers. You could go up there at that time. And we looked at New York, and John said, "Oh, this is too much to handle, trying to control New York." I said, "Yeah, we'll have to see what we could do." So anyway, when I got to St. Louis, I realized there was an urban development area where they were going to rebuild a lot of stuff, and so it really wasn't used. Also had a great old railroad, which had a lot of character. And so I brought John in. I said, "John, I could just fill this with trash, and we could shoot this and that, and we could say this is New York. And you got the bridge and all that." So he liked the idea. What I needed was an airplane crash. So I said, okay, we'll do this, and the crash will be here. So I'm going to go to Arizona, where they have used airplane parts, and collect a lot of pieces, and I'll ship them here. We'll have a tail section and various things. So I'm going through, I think Mark Madgebridge was my assistant at the time, but he left to go direct a movie. Anyway, and we started making a list of what's this tail and this wing section, and the guy there said, oh, he says, you need a big airplane. I said, yeah. He says, there's a DC-8, which is a prop plane, but for sale, but it was not used anymore. It was just junk. And I said, really? He says, yeah, they only want like $5,000 for it. I said, where is it? He said, in St. Louis. I said, oh my God. So I went back to St. Louis. I looked at this plane, and my painter would become sort of construction coordinator. And I said, I need this. We'll take the props off so they look like jets. And he cut the thing in like 3 pieces and shipped it. We didn't even get permits. We just put it in this lot. And so John came, and I said, this is the shot. Kurt walks across here, and we set the thing on fire. Roy will get the plane burning. And so, great. So that next morning, people said, well, what are we shooting? And John said, oh, we're shooting Joe's shots. I mean, this is the relationship we had. He said, oh, Joe's got it worked out. We'll shoot what Joe said. We got very comfortable with that kind of thing. Roy would start it on fire, and then I said, okay, cut. I mean, he'd say cut. I said, put the fire out. And Roy said, I can't. It's magnesium. I said, John, we got to really do a second shot real quick. So anyway, that was an interesting thing. Another interesting thing was in the San Fernando Valley, there's this river, LA River, and there's a big basin there. And I said that would be a great place to build the United States police force. So I did these sort of super model buildings, sort of in black, because it was United States Police Force. You know, we were like being very fascist kind of thing. Police controlled everything. But it was supposed to be on Liberty Island. So I built this entrance little building, sort of just wedge-shaped kind of thing. It had an entranceway. So we collapsed that. It was 2 sides that came to a peak. So it was easy to collapse. And we put that on a truck, and we drove it to Liberty Island, and we put it on a ferry, the last ferry to the island, so we didn't have to pay for a special boat. And we set it up, and we had Tommy Atkins come down the Statue of Liberty and go to the checkout point and then go through. And Dean Cundy was the cameraman, and he was like the best, I got to tell you. So what he did is a continuous shot of Tommy coming in, and then it goes to United States Police Force, just letters, U.S. Police Force, and then it goes just to black. And we got just to black, he cuts. We put the thing back on the truck, bring it to L.A. There's no effect shot here. He puts the camera in the same distance, measures everything, turns it on, and then he pans to the right, and Tommy comes out, and we're in L.A. Police Force thing. It was very, very, very clever. And I got to tell you, he was so good at shooting day for night and night for night, where a lot of films where they show you dark and you don't see anything. And yet it was night, but you could see people quite clearly. So he had a way of lighting and shooting that you believed it was all night, and some of it was night, but it was just lit a certain way. You could see the people, the actors, which I always respected about his work. Very, very good cameraman. It was St. Louis and the L.A. River area bit there. And we shot, supposed to be the Trade Center. We shot that in L.A. There's 2 huge buildings in Beverly Hills area. We shot that. Then we shot some locations where I had to take the walls and do a lot of graffiti and stuff like that. And we shot that at the Art Institute in Pasadena. And so I put a huge, just paper, rolls of white paper, and then we would graffiti that. So that was basically it. That was the locations and sets, and it's interesting because Kurt Russell, of course, we worked with his wife on, his partner, Goldie Hawn. She was really cute, nice lady. It was one of the happiest movies I worked on, just the relationship with people. So, some movies, I'm not that they're unhappy, but they're just so much work. But the crew was very friendly, and we were getting things done, and we were doing it. I remember we were shooting a train station in Atlanta, which we ended up cutting out. But we had to redo posters and stuff, and I'm out there putting this up, and Cundy came up to me and he says, "That's pretty amazing. Production designer, Academy Award nominee and stuff, putting up posters." I said, "We got to do what we got to do," and that's the way it was. We was more of a team effort, Yeah, it was fun. It was a fun movie. The next thing I did with John was Starman. And I did, he wanted me to design it, and I said, "No, I'm trying to get something directed, but I'll be a consultant, visual consultant," which I designed a spaceship for it, and I directed the second unit, and that was pretty much our relationship after that.
You did one that I absolutely love, and I don't think it's enough credit, and you were associate producer as well as production designer on it, and that is Free Jack. Yeah, interesting. Free Jack, with the Jack. That was a lot of work, and I thought that I did some pretty good work on it, and the critics panned the hell out of it. One really picked on my sets, and it was interesting because the studio, whoever ran that was Warner Brothers, I think, and they gave the director a really hard time. And he was really such a good guy. He was an Australian guy. Jeff Murphy, what a nice guy. But the studio kept pushing him and this and that, and Emilio Estevez wasn't quite right, I guess, because the leading lady, she seemed stronger than he. But he was a nice guy, and we were shooting some late night in some building, and there was a big tablet of paper on an easel, and I started drawing a shark, just wasting time. And he says, "Oh my God, my brother would love that," Charlie Sheen. And he said, "That's good. Here's Charlie, Joe." So I gave it to him. A couple of years later, I did a movie with Charlie, and he thanked me for that. But anyway. It was interesting. It was a lot of work doing that show, and I thought it was going to be successful. Interesting that it just sort of died. I was thinking about that. So I'm standing, and I was thinking about that because somebody was talking about Anthony Hopkins. So we're on the big set there, and Anthony comes in and he's standing there, and I said, "Anthony, this is." You're such a great actor, the scene you're going to do. He looks at me and he says, "Me, are you kidding? Look at the stuff you're doing. Boy, this is fantastic." And it was such a compliment, And I thought, oh, good, I guess this is great. And then some of the critics didn't do it well, and the picture just sort of did nothing. But, it was quite a challenge. Mr. Alves, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Welcome to the theater. For everyone's enjoyment, we'd like to remind you of the following rules. No talking. No smoking. No littering. No red meat. No freedom of religion. And remember, all marriages must be approved by the Department of Health. Failure to obey these rules will result in immediate loss of citizenship and deportation to the island of Los Angeles. Enjoy the show.
Your rules are really beginning to annoy me.
We ran a psycho profile on him using a database of 5 million sociopathic personalities. He hit the bottom of the curve.
Catches on quick, doesn't she?
Town loves a winner.
Say we play a little Bangkok rules. Nobody draws until this hits the ground. You ready? Draw. You got a problem with that?
All right, we are back, and we are talking about Escape from New York. So we mentioned a little bit earlier that there were a lot of other escape froms that were bandied about over the years. I had heard specifically of one called Escape from Earth. I don't remember if I heard about that before Escape from LA or not, but there were definitely talks of different adventures of Snake Plissken, because he doesn't die at the end of this one, and he's not waiting around to see if he's infected or if Childs is infected like The Thing. So the idea of continuing making more Snake Plissken movies or projects was kind of, to me anyway, a no-brainer. And we ended up getting Escape from LA in, 1996, I think it was?
Yes, sir.
And I can't say that it's a sequel, because it's basically a remake. I mean, you can take almost every single character in the movie and equate them to a character from the first movie, which I think is kind of doing a little bit of a disservice, because I really wanted more Snake Plissken adventures, whereas this just feels like a retread of the first Snake Plissken adventure.
Mike, there's a submarine. All right. It's totally different. It's not the same. There's plastic surgeons. It's on the other coast. It's different.
Yeah. Map to the Stars, Eddie, is in no way Cabby. Yes, nope. I know that, what's the guy's name? Cuervo
Jones. Yeah.
He's
Duke
in
of New York.
No way the Duke of New York, because they're all pale imitations. Cuervo Jones, what the fuck, dude? That he's got the basketball court and he's got the guy out there cutting heads off of people that can't make the shot clock. It's so
I love the basketball scene. I freaking love the basketball scene. I love it. Kurt Russell makes every shot, even that long ass full court one. That to me says the movie is worth watching just for that.
It just looks so fucking cheap so often. Like,
yeah, it does.
Him walking through the back alleys and you've got all the girls from Central Casting dressed up in their prostitute outfits. Him walking into LA and it's just like, okay, Kurt, you can't walk one step more or else you'll like run into the painting that we put up. I mean, it looks bad. The special effects, especially when the waves come and destroy the cars and then he starts surfing. When he surfed, because I saw Escape from LA in the theater, and when he surfed, I almost lost my fucking mind.
You and everybody else.
The CGI supervisor, David Jones, did you ever hear that he took responsibility for that? He said it was his fault. Yeah, from Buena Vista Visual Effects. They just, honestly, they had $50 million. The first film, to put it in perspective, the first film was $7 million, right? This was $50 million. It was a big budget movie at the time. And they went with a house that didn't really have a reputation for computer generated effects, yet had a ton of computer generated effects involved and just didn't know what they were doing. So I agree. All the special effects are really not good. Even for the time, they're just not good.
I love the story of them doing the special effects for the first movie, how they're like, yeah, we talked to John Dykstra and his consultation fee was $1 million. And so they shopped around all of the effects and ended up at New World. And there was this guy, I think his name is something like James Cameron, something Terminator, something Titanic. Yeah, some sort of boat movie he made. I think he also did Piranha 2. But yeah, he was in charge of a lot of the special effects and stuff. So, but they ended up shopping it to a pretty cheap New World and ended up getting those fucking fantastic effects. It helps that you got Joe Alves as the production designer, and he's coming off of stuff like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where they're just, bleeding money. And they, here he is like, okay, Joe, you got $300,000. Make it work. And he fucking made it work. Everybody makes it fucking work. And then you get to so many years later and it's just like, man, this doesn't work. This hang gliding scene doesn't work either.
Nothing works. the visual effects are unforgivable in this movie. You know, like a lot of times when bad CG gets reevaluated, it's like, oh, it just feels like a cutscene from a PlayStation game. Like this didn't even feel like that. It felt like the previs you would see now. Like you'd see a comparison video on YouTube, the previs versus the finished thing. Here's the previs. That's good enough.
It's like that version of Wolverine Origins that leaked, you know?
Mm-hmm. I remember that. That's a callback.
The only thing that I really liked about it was the plastic surgery scene and the makeup effects. The Rick Baker makeup effects of Bruce Campbell with that super tiny pointy nose and those huge cheeks. He looks monstrous. And it's like he looks worse there than he does as a demon. And I mean that as a compliment. It's like he's almost unrecognizable until he starts talking and you get the Bruce Campbell voice. But man, he looks good. I really like what they were doing there. And I like the idea of
it's a brilliant
this is LA.
idea.
So we're going to, plastic surgery's gone wild. But then you get Valerie Golino and that fucking horrible shag wig that she's wearing. What is going on with that?
In 93, I was a projectionist at a theater in Santa Monica, and we were always sort of awash in film industry people who I'd never fanboyed out about, but Kurt Russell was there once smoking a cigarette out front, and I went and smoked one with him. And at the time I was like, please, please, please make a sequel to Escape from New York. And then a couple of years later, like maybe 6 months, 3-4 months maybe, before the movie came out, the theater chain I worked at would constantly get invitations to films in order to determine whether or not they were going to exhibit them. So there was a screening of Escape from LA, and I got to drive onto the Paramount lot and sit in the Paramount Theater, which is, as a projectionist, the best theater I've ever seen ever. It was just gorgeous. Just sitting there, and the music comes up and the titles come up. I was never more excited for a movie and never more disappointed with everything that followed. In fact, when I rewatched it for this podcast, when the titles come up again, I got that same feeling like, oh, something good is going to happen now. But then it just falls to pieces.
I don't feel the same.
That's fine, buddy.
I might get kicked out of the podcast. I don't know what the rules are, but I enjoy this movie despite its flaws. I realize it's I think the effects are terrible. Probably for a movie of this size, some of the worst I've ever seen. It does look like pre-res. It's a bit too campy for sure, but I also think that kind of fits with the LA vibe. I really do in many respects. I love the take on LA. There's a lot of great ideas that don't necessarily get good execution here. I hate this. I can't stop saying it. I just can't. I hate the surfing scene. I just don't like it. I think it's idiotic. And I never understood why anyone thought that was a great idea for Snake Plissken to be doing that. But the hang gliding thing, it was all right. That didn't bother me so much, but there's so much other stuff that just I find fun. I think the assault that Snake Plissken's doing on the, brigade or whatever it was, whether they Corvo Jones and his entourage are driving away and he's going car to car to car. I love that. I love the draw moment. The Bangkok
that
rules.
Was good.
Bangkok
I love that moment.
Good. No question.
Yep.
Just to me, it was one of those. Thank you. That's Snake Plissken. He cheats. That's a stupid thing that you guys were going to do. You were actually going to wait for this can to drop. That's idiotic. And I personally, despite its flaws, the last 10 minutes, which I believe Carpenter said Kurt Russell wrote the ending. I don't know if that's confirmed or not, but I believe he said that. I love the last 10 minutes of the movie. I love the actual ending. I think the ending is freaking great. I know it's very reminiscent, obviously, of Escape from New York, but on the same token, I just love the whole shut the world down, and Snake Plissken does it because no other hero would do that. No other anti-hero would do that. He shut the whole freaking world down. I thought that was a great touch. And then I
agree.
Goes
that was
away.
Definitely the most Snake Plissken moment of the entire movie. But as far as like what they have him doing and the way he's portrayed, it seems like everyone kind of forgot what we liked about him to begin with. That, yeah, he's a badass and he's a man of few words, but there was also kind of a sense of humor in the first film. And, it wasn't all just the kind of bluster. It feels like, it feels like Dan Aykroyd coming back to Elwood Blues. Like he suddenly doesn't know how to do the accent and doesn't really seem to get what that character was anymore. Like I'm not saying that it's that extreme here, but it just seems like The characterization of Plissken is of a piece with the rest of the movie in that it's more comic booky and fantastical and everything the first movie wasn't. There are some things I do like about it. The first film takes place in New York, but it's not like, hey, clearly we're in Times Square now, or clearly we're at Madison Square Garden. The path that he follows from Mulholland down to Hollywood, into Beverly Hills, to the West Side, and then has to fly down to like that all I liked. And I did like the takes that they had, like the Beverly Hills sequence, of course, being the most pointed. It's just so lame. Why didn't they just have an airstrike? Instead of sending in Snake Plissken in a submarine, just send a thermonuclear device and create an earthquake. Like, there's no reason for him to be going in and getting this thing. It's just ridiculous.
Well, apparently they only made one. You got to have that one so you can target the thing. But here's the way I looked at it, and I guess maybe this is just my perspective. But to me, New York, Escape from New York, is very gritty, down and dirty. It's very New York in that respect. This felt that they were, and I'm not saying they accomplished it in every way, but this one to me felt like they were going for more of the LA aesthetic, more of the LA vibe, a little bit more campier, a lot more colorful, a lot more, I don't want to say comedic, but comedic undertones. And they definitely don't understand having a character like Snake Plissken in that world. And it just seems like everybody is just enamored with him like they would be with celebrity. So to me, that's how I kind of saw it, and maybe that's just what I convinced myself of so I can enjoy it.
I mean, it kind of fits the whole thing, because isn't the running gag in this one, I thought you were taller?
Yeah, like Tom Cruise. Yep.
Yeah, like Tom Cruise or Sylvester Stallone and any of these action heroes. I thought you'd be taller. You can tell that Carpenter got into comic books because this movie feels like a comic book. And I think it actually probably would have been better served to have been a comic book because it hits those beats so familiar that we saw in the first one. And I wish it would have just kind of gone off in a little bit of a different direction. That you have
I do too.
Cuervo Jones driving around in this big car, and rather than like the chandelier, you've got like all these baby heads on his car. And I'm just like, what am I watching here? Yeah, I like the end of it as well. I like the idea that America, and I know that this is completely crazy and this would never happen, that America has fallen under the auspices of a crazy religious fanatic and has turned the U.S. into a police state based upon Christianity. I know that sounds crazy, would never ever happen, that nobody that we have in the government would ever support anything like that. Everyone believes in the separation of church and state. So this is just this whole weird world that we're in. Cliff Robertson does such a good job as this religious fanatic who really isn't that religious at all. As soon as he gets the opportunity, he's going to basically have a man murdered on camera in front of the world. Okay.
And kill his daughter at the same time.
And kill his daughter. Yes. He doesn't give a shit about anything other than his political goals. Imagine that. I like that. I like the end, even though it's very Total Recall to me, this whole,
You think this is the real Quaid? It is.
Catches on quick, doesn't she? I like that delivery.
I like the whole religious sort of oligarchy kind of thing, but what felt misplaced at the end is the sort of, this is, I'm sure, Carpenter and Russell talking like, we're in America and there's no more smoking and there's no more red meat. And I'm thinking about a president who is from Lynchburg. Like, it would be a law that everyone has to smoke and everyone has to eat red meat.
And everybody's got to drink whiskey.
You caught the gotta smoke line too, right? Like a throwback to, he's got that a lot in his movies. The gotta smoke line. Yeah.
Why is Pam Grier's voice lowered?
He lowered it an octave and a half because
totally unnecessary, totally distracting.
Well, because that's how trans people talk, don't you know?
Good Lord.
I will say, like, for this time, hardly any directors were ever coming close to a transgender character. So I think he deserves something for that, for at least making the attempt. I'm not saying he got it right. People learn. It's been 20 plus years or whatever. That's how long ago it was. But I think he was making the attempt to make a tough transgender character.
I like Carjack Malone. She's a good character. And it was fun to see somebody from Plissken's past who isn't intimidated by him at all. It's just giving shit back to him. It's just like, why go this extra
the voice
step? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. I misunderstood what your argument was.
The thing about this movie that I like and also disappoints me at the same time is I love all of these actors that are in here. I mean, I fucking love Buscemi, love Stacy Keach, love Michelle Forbes, all of these characters, other than the guy that plays Cuervo Jones, who I wasn't really familiar with. I kept thinking that he was Gregory Sierra, and I was like, no, Gregory Sierra is probably like 70 when this movie was made. But I was just like, yeah, I love all of these actors. And the relationship that Snake has with Hawk is not necessarily mirrored with the relationship that he has with Stacy Keach, which is a shame because I love Stacy Keach. Also, making it two people by having Keach and Forbes there, I thought wasn't really the best idea in the world. I love Michelle Forbes, but she's not Tom Atkins, you know? Atkins is there in the first movie, but he's not nearly as present as Michelle Forbes is in this one.
She seems to almost outrank Stacy Keach, you know, like
almost, yeah.
They're taking the directions from her.
Well, maybe it's that matriarchal society that we're going to get in on Mars in a few years.
It's the first step.
I wish she would have taken full charge and cut that ponytail off.
I was saying during Escape from New York, like it was heartening to see characters on both sides of like the divide that is Snake Plissken who are decent and trying to do the right thing. Here we just get cartoon bad guys on one side and cartoon bad guys on the other.
I agree with that. It's definitely a less nuanced movie. It's more straightforward, more action, just a sci-fi action flick. I just enjoyed it. And I think Kurt Russell's having a good time. And it's hard for me to not have a good time when he's having a good time, I guess.
Aaron, you never have to apologize for having a good time.
No, I feel like my whole life I've had to apologize for liking this movie. So
never have to apologize for liking a movie. I don't even like the term guilty pleasure. You know, you should just have pleasure. Never feel guilty about anything.
You know, this is a true story. And I am about shit myself. I'm doing research for this podcast, and there was some, I think it was Entertainment Weekly back in 2007, I believe is the date. This Escape from New York, not this one. Escape from New York was voted the #1 guilty pleasure.
Fuck those guys.
I was like, fuck you and everybody associated with this article. If you think that's a guilty pleasure, I don't feel guilty 1 second of that movie. This one I do. There's seconds where I definitely feel guilty.
I would say don't feel too guilty with this.
To your point earlier, Aaron, about like this being a more LA movie, like I think that's true. And I think we were all willing to go with this character into new places in new situations. But for some goddamned reason, they had it in their mind that people only wanted to see Escape from New York again with a high gloss on it. And that's the ultimate failure of the film. And further, like, you know, we end up at this fake Disneyland, the Happy Kingdom by the Sea at the end of this movie. Other than like a couple of, you know, distant matte shots, we get the idea that it's an amusement park. Really, it just feels like a movie backlot. And all I kept thinking during the sequence is, why doesn't the whole end of this movie take place on a ruined movie backlot? You know, we could have stumbled onto a Western town at some point and like Carpenter could have really done his thing.
Would have been perfect. You should have wrote that part of it because that would have been. Can we just agree at this point, after Beverly Hills Cop 3 and this, that amusement parks are not good sets for movies unless it's vacation. That's literally the only time I want to see an amusement park on film again.
I liked Adventureland quite a bit.
Okay. All right. There's another one. I forgot about that one.
It's the world's most secure prison. It holds the planet's deadliest criminals. It's impenetrable because it's not on Earth.
I'm going to ask you a few questions. Do you dream while you're under?
I'm going to dream about you.
You want to test me? Sit down.
He's got a gun.
Mr. President? There's been a massive takeover on MS-1. My daughter is on a goodwill mission on that station. There's only one man who can get her out. Who? Snow. He's the best there is. But he's a loose cannon.
Don't get me wrong, it's a dream vacation. I mean, I'd go into space, I'd get inside the maximum security nut house, get past all the psychos, save the president's daughter if she's not dead already. I'm thrilled that you would think of me.
Get in there.
God, I hate
heights. The gravity generator will hold you up.
You gotta trust me on this.
Really?
What the hell are you doing?
I am bringing you back from the dead.
Can I have your attention? Our meal ticket is a woman. We need her alive.
What the hell is happening here?
It's falling out of the sky.
Come back to me, my little Emily.
Impact on the eastern seaboard in 8 minutes.
We're gonna get out of here.
What if this doesn't work?
Well, then we're probably gonna die. Don't worry, it's perfectly safe.
A simple thank you is enough.
So speaking of a movie where I like a lot of the people that are in it, but I don't know if I necessarily like the end product, let's talk about the 2012 film based on an original idea by Luc Besson.
Hey, there's some bullshit.
Which stars Guy Pearce, who I fucking love Guy Pearce, Lenny James, who again I love, Peter Stormare, who the man has been in horrible movies, but he can do no wrong by me. I just love every time Stormare is on anything. And then you get some other people too, Maggie Grace and the guy with the crazy eye and his brother. And I guess, are we supposed to be surprised when it turns out these two are brothers? I don't know.
I was.
Sure.
Lockout 2012, which has the distinction, like I was out there looking for articles about other near escape from movies, and after a certain time, the only thing that if you look up Escape from New York sequels or ripoffs, or because we should say as well, after Escape from New York came out, the Italians jumped on this post-apocalyptic cityscape, and there was like a whole wave of Italian knockoff films, and probably other countries as well, but I'm thinking especially of like 1999 After the Fall of New York, and there was Bronx Warriors, and there were like a few other, and so I was trying to find like a list of all of these movies because I knew that they existed, just like how Mad Max spurred all of these other movies. I was like, oh, Escape from New York also did. But now if you look up ripoffs of Escape from New York, all you get are articles about Lockout.
Yes.
Thanks to the litigation.
And I can't see it. I just can't see the similarities, you know?
Shit. Even Guy Pearce got the script and he was like, man, I can't wait to play Snake Plissken. This is going to be great.
Don't you mean Marion Snow?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oof. Good.
Yeah, even the John Wayne reference is a nod back to it. Yeah.
I love Guy Pearce, but man, is he not suited for these little one-liner quips and stuff.
Miscast spectacularly. I think somebody like Ryan Reynolds could have probably played that role. And Guy Pearce doesn't do a bad job or anything, but good Lord, like the character itself is just kind of an asshole I don't even care about. Here's my total review of the movie. Projectile weapons on a space station. The end.
The movie drags. It has no right to drag, and it drags. It drags so much because I was thinking about it the other day, and I rewatched it, and I was just like, okay, I can remember the beginning, and I remember a little bit of the middle, and then I remember the end. But there's a lot of shit in here that just drags the story down, and it doesn't do anything. Which is, I mean, I like Luc Besson a lot. You know, I was the guy who last week was like, oh yeah, District B12 or B13, it's fucking fantastic. You should see that movie. And here he is. Here's Luc Besson ripping off another John Carpenter film, but not doing it nearly as good.
There's the whole scene, the car chase scene on Earth, like 15 years after Escape from LA, and the effects are somehow worse. What is going on? Just garbage. I think like once they got into space, the effects weren't so terrible. And like there was this sort of zero-G fight. Like I thought that was kind of fun until the henchman like shot out a touchscreen panel, which turned off the turbines. And by the way, if you can restart those turbines remotely, can't you just lower the oxygen levels in the space station until everyone passes out and then go do whatever you need to do? It's like, when we're talking about sort of speculative fiction and genre, I mentioned before, you're asking the audience to suspend their disbelief quite a bit. So all the other stuff has to be solid. And this one was just like, you know, Escape from New York on a space station. It writes itself.
But it doesn't. He doesn't take the time to actually flesh out stuff and be like, okay, here's the next obstacle he has to get past. Here's the next interesting character. Because again, you're fucking limited. You're on a space station and it's only, like when they talk about how it's only criminals in New York in the first movie, in Escape from New York, yeah, there are some really good people. There are some interesting people that are there. But these guys are so interchangeable. And I mean, thank goodness that the one bad guy, thank goodness that both of the major bad guys have these accents, and then the one guy's accent is way worse than the other guy's, and he has a wonky eye. Thank goodness for that, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to tell them apart from all of these other guys that are just like hanging out.
And a weird choice to make a character this Irish suspendered like psychopath so soon after Justin Theroux did it in the Charlie's Angels movie. Like he just could not stop ripping off everything that was, rattling in his brain.
Lockout was one of those movies I saw it in the theater. I think it came out the same week as Cabin in the Woods, if I remember right. And I remember having a great time with it. But I think it's more because I went with a group of friends. It reminded me completely of Escape from New York. And I liked Guy Pearce. He didn't bother me at all. And then I rewatched it for this, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of story issues that I didn't remember at all. Because, damn, there's a lot of them. But I still like Guy Pearce. I think he does a fine job. Like he's not. Kurt Russell shouldn't be worried at any point, but he does a fine enough job. There's a couple quips in there where I laughed, and a couple other ones I'm like, you didn't deliver that very well. You tried too hard on that one. But the story, just the entire concept is where I struggle now that I'm not with a bunch of friends and we haven't probably been drinking. The idea that they have a space station for prisoners seems really extreme, really expensive. And the safeguards were just so like, randomly they can open all of them like that. That just feels like you should have had this covered. There's gotta be protocols in place for this. And it just all happens so fast and so ridiculous. And there's no real solution other than send one guy up there to get the president's daughter out. That's your one solution in space. The story is a reach.
A local Walmart has more cameras than this Supermax outer space prison. Like they have to rely on their negotiator to get there. And by the way, a negotiator? What? That coupled with open fires in a pure oxygen environment, I was checked out pretty quickly in this movie.
The case, how they got to the case where it's, this guy's obviously, he's got dementia, he's delusional, whatever the case is. And when Mace is basically rattling off some things while Snow is trying to save him. Snow, hey, it's different than Snake. It's a totally different name. She's hearing it and she puts that all together and that's how she finds the case. I thought that was such a reach. At no point do I think in the movie, as much as I really did like Guy Pearce, like there were moments where I'm like, you really could have made this work. It just, wasn't in the writing or whatever. But I don't recall a moment where I felt like I understood why she would be so attracted to him other than he's good looking and he has good arms that he keeps flexing randomly.
Because she has to. That's
the only reason. Because I really couldn't find a scene rewatching it. And the first time it didn't bother me as much because I didn't care probably to pick it apart. But here I'm looking at it going, there's not a scene yet that I found where she honestly seems to really be warm to this guy and think he's a great guy other than, a couple close connections to genuine empathy.
Them falling in love by the end was just like, well, why? Just because they're a man and a woman and they're in the same place, I guess.
Should have kept him asexual like Snake. If you're going to copy the movie, copy it correctly.
And it just continued on after the action was over. Like the scene in the train station where she's slowly, not since Usual Suspects, we had to watch a coffee cup break 3 times for somebody to make a revelation. Like as soon as she walked into a train station, I'm like, oh, it was a locker. Just go to that took forever. And then we go back to the fucking police station and we find out that this other guy is the actual, who cares? Just get on the station and beat up some bad guys and rescue the thing. That's all we're here for.
It wasn't good. It was not good. And I really wish that it had been good because I think that Escape from Earth is a good idea, and that's basically what this movie was, but just they didn't know how to execute it at all.
You know what's not a good idea? Building a space station just for prisoners.
And that's true.
So stupid. I don't understand that.
if we have space travel and we're able to do all this stuff, it's going to be like the Elon Musks of the world that are, it's that, I don't like the movie, but it's that Elysium situation where it's the rich people that can afford to leave Earth are going to leave Earth and then leave the rest of it to us savages down here that can't afford to leave.
You know what the government of any country is not going to do? Spend a fortune to house them in space. That's what they're not going to do. Nobody's going to spring for that.
Cryo sleep situation. Like, just put them under the ground here.
If they can figure out how to do cryo stuff, yeah, this is the perfect time for your Demolition Man prison. And they come out and their brains are all scrambled and stuff. And
yeah,
it's
something.
Like, okay. Yeah. Well, that's what they were proposing, but it really didn't come through that well.
I mean, they kind of just should have made it Die Hard in space and not Escape from New York in space.
Yeah, he was the prisoner.
Something.
That would have been, I think I still would have had a hard time with why are you spending so much money to put prisoners in space, but hey.
Not going away.
Or they're on a regular space station and somehow criminals make it up there and then it's, to your point, Die Hard on a space station.
I don't hate the movie. I just don't. It's fine. It's whatever. It is, for what it is, it's a typical Luc Besson movie. In terms of Guy Pearce being in it, he is one of my actors. Like, there's a few actors where I point to and I go, that's a guy that always deserved a 10 times better career than he ended up with. And that's all this movie reminded me of, that he's one of those for me.
Agreed.
Let's go back and listen to the LA Confidential episode if folks want to hear me just singing Guy Pearce's praises, because I fucking love this guy. And I love him in so many movies. I mean, I am a huge fan of the Kevin Reynolds version of The Count of Monte Cristo. And he's the perfect villain in that movie. He is wonderful to hate in that film. And yeah, I really like the guy, genuinely empathize with his characters, but man, it was tough to really get behind them because, Snake Plissken being enigmatic is one thing, but Snake doesn't crack jokes. Yeah, he'll say things that are funny, but he doesn't crack jokes. Whereas to your point, this is like a Ryan Reynolds role. Recast him as Deadpool, and there you go. It's Deadpool in space.
It's definitely written that way.
I talked a little bit about the ripoffs of the movie, especially the Italian ones. What always reminds me is some of the poster art of Escape from New York. There's some really good posters for Escape from New York. There's some bad posters of Escape from New York. There's one that I'm looking at right now, which very much looks like it is not Escape from New York. Whoever drew Snake Plissken didn't really do a good job of that. But the most iconic image from Escape from New York with the posters is an image that never actually shows up in the movie, but that whole idea of the Statue of Liberty's head, I love him standing in front of that.
Yeah, I have it on my wall. I'm looking at it right now. It is crazy because you look for that the whole time. The first time you watch the movie, if you see the poster before you watch it. And I remember I had seen the poster before I watched the movie. And I remember going, well, when does that happen? Because they actually have shots where you see the Statue of Liberty fully intact. Does that mean somebody's going to sever the head of the Statue of Liberty? This is going to be fucking amazing. And it never happens.
I have always wondered if the Statue of Liberty had rolling down the street in Cloverfield, if that was an homage to Escape from New York.
It was. I did read that. J.J. Abrams actually did that as an homage because he's a big fan. He loved Escape from New York as a kid. I did read that when I was reading up for this. So yeah.
Okay, good. I'm glad I was able to call that.
You are sharp, sir.
Woohoo. So many good images, so much good stuff. And yeah, you just can't say enough. I mean, that I'm even sitting here praising the poster of all things.
I do love the poster though. I miss the days when you've got art, when you actually get poster art where it wasn't just a picture of, I don't know, Stallone's face or The Rock's face. So they're just looking stoic. Everybody's stoic. I mean, it was art. It was a great poster.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and take another break and we're going to play a preview for next week's show.
On dark streets, where violence consumes everything it touches, and the innocent live in fear, two men dedicated to justice will follow different paths. As one searches for revenge and the other for redemption, fate will bring them together. Now, for those who hide behind the shadow of corruption, only one thing is certain. A day of reckoning is coming. From the director of The Killer and Mission Impossible 2. Chow Yun-fat and Tony Leung in one of the greatest action movies ever made. Hard Boiled 2-disc Ultimate Edition. Look for it on DVD, exclusively from Dragon Dynasty.
That's right. We will be back next week with a look at John Woo's Hard Boiled. Until then, I want to thank this week's co-hosts, Aaron and Father Malone. So, Father Malone, what is keeping you busy, sir?
A lot of business going on over at fathermalone.com if you want to view or listen to any of it. I do a half-hour radio drama called Dark Destinations, where we bring listeners to infamous fictional towns. There's also links to the other podcasts I work on and my YouTube channel, where I also review movies just like Escape from New York. So you can hit me up over there.
I didn't realize that you had seen Escape from New York.
You've never seen it. That's what I hear.
Is Snake Plissken secretly Baron Zemo? Is he really Mephisto? What's going on in Escape from L.A.? Is this all a dream in Snake Plissken's head?
Yeah, that's what happened. He's dead. It's actually heaven because he died because he got back an hour late. So that's what that is.
You'll never believe what we found out about Escape from L.A. So, Aaron, how about you? What have you been up to?
All right. Well, every week I do The Hollywood Outsider. It's available at thehollywoodoutsiders.com or in your favorite podcast app. We review movies with a more jovial touch, I think, than a lot of podcasts. And we also have a topic each week in film or television that we try to discuss. It's been going on for a long time, so it's a fun show to do. I also do Presenting Hitchcock, which is, you can find it at thehollywoodoutsiders.com or just Presenting Hitchcock in your podcast apps. And we take an Alfred Hitchcock movie once a month and we kind of just go through it and dissect it and see what we love or didn't love. And then we kind of rate it on what we call the Hitchcock scale. So it's a fun show to do. I actually am just closing up another podcast. We just hit 100 episodes and we're just wrapping that one up called Smirk. And that is where each week one of our hosts, myself or my other two hosts, write a short story. And then that short story leads into a conversation on whatever the topic or theme of their short story was. And it's like a short half-hour show that's usually a lot of fun.
You said that you review films in a much more upbeat and jovial way. Are you calling me out?
Not your show. No. That's why I said other podcasts. I specifically don't mean, I listen to your show, but I've listened to a lot of them where I'm like, God, do you even like movies? Do you even like movies? Why are you talking about films? You obviously don't like them. Those kinds of podcasts.
There's a show out there called We Hate Movies. I mean, what the hell? Why would you even make them? Come on.
Why do we care about your hatred?
Why would we ever listen to that show?
I like to find I like to find the good in it if I can. And that's what we try to do on that one, but not always. There's some bad shit too. I've got a friend who has a theory that there's no such thing as a bad movie, just movies that aren't good enough for, or just movies that aren't good enough for you. And I'm like, no, there's a lot of really bad movies. I don't understand that logic.
Yeah. I've got a friend who always reminds me, he says, every movie is somebody's favorite movie. No matter how bad it is, somebody out there loves that movie. And sometimes that makes me really sad about the world.
Sometimes people are just wrong, too. It happens. It's okay. Just accept it.
Thank you again, guys, for being on the show. Thanks to everybody for listening. Please head on over to the website, projectionboothpodcast.com, where you can find out more about today's episode. You'll also find a link over to Patreon where you can make a donation to the show. Every donation we get helps the Projection Booth take over the world.
What did I teach you?
You are Duke of New York. You're A number 1.
I can't hear you.
You are the Duke of New York. You're A number 1.